Hey, we are. This is Trey Heath with Michelle and Trey Real Estate. Derek Schaefer. We have a special guest tonight. We're 3 deep. We have more people sitting at this table than are in contention for the Supercross Championship right now. So, Derek, welcome to the Beyond the Curve MX podcast. By the way, I love the new banner. It's awesome. We're going to talk about Denver, Mile High. We're going to talk about PEEWEEs. We're going to talk about concussions. We're probably going to talk a little bit about horses. Derek, I'm going to let you handle the introductions. Please introduce our guest tonight.
All right, we got Kevin Mead here, another moto dad. I see him every other weekend. Got a business just like the platform that we're looking to build. A business, moto dad, living the amateur lifestyle. So everybody meet Kevin.
Hi, I'm Kevin Mead, moto dad. I got a little 50 rider in the area, Declan Mead. Yeah, it's good to be here.
Where are you from? Where are you based out of?
I'm based just north of Tampa in Lutz, Florida, and I'm a farrier for a living. That's how the horse relationship kind of comes in. Plugging along.
So if you didn't watch, if you jump in a minute into the podcast, we actually talk about, we're talking about skydiving. We talk about horses. My daughter's an equestrian. Kevin is a farrier, so he shoes horses, which then if you're shoeing a horse, you're shodding them, which that English is tough to grasp. So we have a connection, even though I don't have a PEEWEE. My PEEWEE's 20, almost 21.
Yep.
So we don't have a connection on the track, but we have a connection with the fact that our lives intertwine on industries. So it's going to be awesome as we continue on this process of growing this podcast of who we sit down with and who we get at the table. And tonight's our first guest. Tonight was actually going to be our wives, but Kevin had the opportunity to come tonight, and our wives are so excited. But the problem is they're excited, but then my wife was like, that just means I got to wait till next week now. So Kevin, we thank you, because I love putting her under a little bit of pressure. So
I like putting my wife under a little bit too.
Yeah, you have to. Well, let's give a big shout out to JQX Concepts. They do wraps, custom vinyl. He does some amazing work here in Lake Wales. He's actually talking to me about starting graphics. So I'm going to drop my bike off, and he's going to do some test runs and get into the graphics world, actually for us.
Well, let's
awesome.
Yeah.
We will work on that, and we will come to that. I just saw a post the other day about one of the graphics companies where a dude's been waiting for weeks just to get a proof.
Yep.
So until we get proof that this can be done, we're going to appreciate the work that he can do, because we're not going to. We'll support this. We'll support because I've seen some of the wraps he's done for cars and stuff.
He does amazing work. He does a lot of the signage around the communities. He's from Frostproof area. He's right on 27. So you get a chance, we'll tag him in all the posts here this week, and check out all his work. Yeah,
but the sign is really cool. It's kind of neat to have new signage up and just keep rolling along.
It'll be at all the races now, so try to get that word out there.
Well, main thing is we got to cover round 16.
Yep.
Denver. This should have been the coronation for 2 riders to kind of cement their history. One did. One may have cemented their history in another way. So, Derek, as we always do, unless you want to defer to the guest, start us off with what your thoughts were with Denver, and then we'll go to 250s.
I'll dig into it. The Mile High Coliseum.
Yeah. It's
always a rough track for the riders. I've never been in that situation. I've never rode out west where a Mile High, less horsepower, roughly 15 to 18% less horse.
Unless you had a Suzuki, it was only 3.
Yeah, very true. But the bikes they're screaming all the time. These guys can't breathe. It's hard to ride in those conditions. I mean, I can imagine it's hard. Like I said, I've never rode in it, but I know what it's like. We followed this sport for our entire lives.
You really feel like you're running out of breath the whole time.
Yeah,
like, You just
put a towel over your face.
Yeah.
Because I mean, there's times that I've rode sick. I've rode with pneumonia, and it's the same situation. It's rough on these guys. So we've seen a lot of injuries. We've seen a lot of wrecks. The fatigue, maybe not. But it's getting to the end of the season. There's always crashes. There's always somebody bouncing out of the championship spots. There's a lot of factors that play in right now, but think this weekend was a whole different scenario of what anybody expected. So,
any for you, Kevin? Any just like random thoughts before we dive into the heats? And
The biggest thing is just we had the most contenders stay healthy through the entire season to have it all unravel here at the very end.
Yeah.
yes,
And they all seem to happen when the tracks got hard.
yeah,
You know, that's something I think that all year it kind of progressed trying to put power to the ground. And now that the tracks are getting slippery and treacherous, and the tracks weren't like gnarly necessarily, just slick, right? And it's come up to eat some people up.
I think to add to that point for me is I read a piece about MXGP. They're missing, was it Febra? They're missing 2 or 3 top guys right now that all crashed early in before season or during season. 450 Supercross, and it's not one of those like I don't want to be that guy, but is it just the bike? Is it just too much bike? Like, why can't we just put the top guys on 250s and call it good?
We know the bikes have progressed over the years, like phenomenally, and it is those 450s. They're never going to use all that power ever.
I really think it's going to get to the point where we're like NASCAR, where we're doing restrictor plates and stuff like that, because the jumps and the tracks are getting so gnarly. And if you remember back to like the 80s and early 90s, like that racing was so much fun to watch because there was 5 guys next to each other on every straightaway.
And they're all on the same bike.
And,
I mean, they don't have... It might be different brands, but that bike is equal power to the next bike. I mean, these ones are too, but they're out of control.
And now we've gotten so much technology, you know, all the ECU programming. We've got RPM dashboards. We're starting on grates. Like, we've taken this grassroots style of racing and really complicated it with a lot of technology.
Yeah.
And sooner or later, it takes the human element down a level, right? And it's
and if you look, speaking on that note, they have sensors on the suspension. They have sensors everywhere throughout the motor. They know how much airflow is going into that motor all the time. They know where they need to adjust. There's everywhere on that bike. There's sensors. There's sensors underneath the front fenders, underneath the seats, underneath. They never had that before.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I was actually going to bring that up. It was ironic to me, with all the carnage we've had. The science of Supercross this week was how much technology's in these bikes.
And I totally forgot that that's what the science was, and here we are talking about it.
And it was, the science of Supercross was literally everything they can maximize. And you're like, dude, these guys are asking for the bike to be turned down. And there's not a 250. Jet was doing the same rhythm that the 450s were doing on a 250.
Yeah.
So if you go to NASCAR, Xfinity has some of the best racing with the package they have versus NASCAR, the main series, and the people love the truck racing. The trucks are running, they're all running their own bodies, but they're all running an Ilmor engine. That one manufacturer makes the engine for trucks. Yeah. And they're running some of the best racing. Yes, the quality of driver isn't always the best. But let's say you can run, we'll still sell 450s. We sell bikes that we don't, they sell Teneres, they don't race them because that's not their Baja bike or their rally bike. You know, why can't we race a 250? I know that they're not going to make 350s, but why can't, and I'm not being that guy. I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to limit, but dadgum, man, we had it, as you said, we had an awesome season until we didn't.
And it's the first time in a long time that we've had a season like this.
Yeah.
It was deep.
Yeah.
The deepest we've seen in a long time.
It's been last season was like kind of boring. I mean, I don't want to say it's boring, but it kind of was. And you know, this season you're like on the edge of your seat every race. Now we you know, we've talked. There's many motos or heats and mains in this racing, but that were, you know, it was just a race. Yeah. But there was still excitement. And like last year, it was just, you knew who won throughout the entire season. You knew how the season was going to play out. There was nothing like there is now, and we've had this massive change of events, and we haven't seen this in a long time.
This year we had 3 that were definitely the front runners, but there was 8 that could win every night.
Yeah, and we had how many different winners? And usually when we see all these crashes, it's the beginning of the season. They'll get knocked out the 1 through 3 rounds, and this year we had a lot of the top contenders running up until round 15, 16. It's wild, and it's been a wild season, and now for it to all unravel all at once, it's exciting. But
and the sad part to me is it was so deep, and now it's like super shallow.
Yeah,
it really affects motocross.
It does.
Yeah. Like motocross is not going to be exciting.
And the World Supercross, right?
Yeah,
now you might have some guys go toy with that because they aren't going to do the whole motocross season.
I just saw today Roxon signed for 23, 24, and 25. He was doing a motocross. He's decided, I'm going to go do World Supercross.
Well, it's because they're offering so much money. It's hard to turn that kind of dollar away.
Yeah. I mean, don't get us. If we all had the opportunity in our professions to be contracted for that kind of money, we would go.
I think part of it's about maintaining a ride through the sport. Maintaining a longer career. Yeah. That's the move that Roxon is making.
But Roxon has always been about diversity too. We've talked in a few episodes back how he's not just he's a phenomenal rider in no matter what aspect.
Yeah.
You watch him he's done some of that stuff for like Red Bull Imagination, and he can do just about anything, and he's just phenomenal at everything he does. And Roxon's the kind of guy that now he's not bound down by Honda and them throwing their fits together. I think he wants to stay diverse, and I love to see what Roxon does because like I said, he's always doing something of that nature.
Yeah.
And it's really exciting to watch him.
And I'm normally up on this stuff, but who is he riding for at World Supercross? Is he doing the same deal where he has to find a team to be on? Because that's part of the World Supercross deal is you have to be on a team.
Yeah.
Are they just going to place him like last year and screw all the other teams over?
But wouldn't you think, though, because HEP, which is what are they called in the World Supercross, they have a team.
Yep.
And he's gelled with that bike. They've got it.
And they've got a number of them already placed.
Yeah.
On that.
So I don't think that they're going to let him go. Like, no. I think after, now that they've got a premier rider like that, I don't think that they're going to let that opportunity slip through their hands because they watched what HRC did to him.
Well, and look at that whole team, right?
Yeah.
Chisholm's come into his own
Yep.
a lot better this year. He's been doing a ton of testing for that team. He has been wore out testing for them guys.
And we've talked about that before.
Look at McElrath this weekend, right? Super clean ride.
Yep.
His best all season given the low field, but he rode smooth and consistent, right?
Yeah.
That team's really come.
And I think the team is jiving. You know what I mean?
Correct.
They've got the riders. They've got a team now. It's not a. I don't want to say like a. I don't even know the word I'm looking for.
They're vibing.
Yeah, to say that they're vibing. They're not clashing. They're not nothing like that.
The whole team is on the same page of trying to progress, trying to make this work. For the future.
And I think with Roxon there, it's helping a lot because he's a very skillful rider.
I think most of it comes from these are our veteran riders. They're not. There's no youth, right? Or I shouldn't say no youth, but right, like they've kind of been there, done that, and are all working toward that longevity in the sport, right? Look at how long Chisholm's been at it, bro.
And let's also think about this too. In the next few years, we have Triumph. We know Triumph's going with, what's his name? Dadgummit. They're taken. But you have Beta, however you say it. There's Ducati's talked about having if Dustin, as a team manager, team owner, kind of plays his cards right, whatever happens with Suzuki, there is going to be some sort of factory support coming his way. He's now not only in Supercross, he's in motocross, he's in World Supercross. They've had success. That name's getting out there. So in the business sense, which is part of our focus, that business sense, he's like, hey, we'll just stack it. We'll just keep stacking. If it's Suzuki, fantastic. I can rewrap this semi.
Oh my God, yeah.
4 different ways.
Yeah.
We'll take whoever. So Beta also is building. I'm actually kind of shocked. I just saw the Beta's putting their they're putting their distribution center in California. They're a European brand. I thought they might be more East Coast, but they're going to California. So I'm kind of shocked that
you have to.
He's a California guy too.
That's where it all happens.
Yeah, but Yamaha's they have half their stuff now in Georgia.
Yeah,
but they were also originally California,
and they still have a headquarters.
Yeah,
right.
You know,
you can have both, but you can't have.
When you get to that size, and then you start branching off. I mean, if I had the opportunity to buy the goat farm, I think I would too.
No, but I'm not even talking about the goat farm.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But they now have the option to. Where HEP, I don't think that they're at that. They're a big team, but I don't think they're at that level yet.
And that comes into like tax reasons and like business sense, right? Yeah. Like why they're moving out of California, and nobody can blame them for that.
But it's good. I mean, it's good that we're getting these brands. I'm actually looking forward to 24, 25. Kind of see what these other brands do. Does it knock someone out?
And I'll pull the elephant in the room. You know, what about electric bikes? Right? That's coming.
It's coming.
It's coming, man.
It's coming hard.
You're talking about all these different brands, right? That's coming. That's going to be your restrictor plate,
and
right?
With Stark that just dropped their bike.
Finally.
And once that thing takes off, do we see Alta coming back? You know, those type of bikes that was it Roxon? It wasn't Roxon. Who ran it in straight rhythm that time? A few years back, they ran the Alta.
Josh Hill.
One of the hills. Yeah. And that bike was phenomenal, straight rhythm. Yeah, he didn't get real high, but a lot of it was the rider. Yeah. And then electric bike. They're not used to it, but they're going to make a big scene in this industry soon. And I mean, us as the PEEWEE moto dads, I mean, we already have the e-bike classes. So, and they're big and they're growing big time.
Well, I mean, the KTM Junior Challenge is all electric.
Yeah.
Well, and it's because that's a really selling model.
Yeah.
Why? Because it's low maintenance, man.
Yeah.
You get somebody new into the sport, right? Their first interaction with a dirt bike, they've got to change oil, figure out how to clean an air filter, do all these things, on top of motors. There's no maintenance to an electric bike.
I mean, I look at it this way. My mother-in-law, who hasn't been on a bicycle, is asking me questions about e-bikes. And she wants to get an e-bike, and it's like, wait a second, like this is actually happening. I can't imagine going to a race and listening to
all you're gonna hear is chain slapping.
It's definitely weird. And
Dade City this weekend, it was so it's always screaming and yelling, and then e-bike class starts and there's nothing. You hear the announcer once in a while.
And what's cool about it, right? Like on a training aspect with my son, I'm able to tell him 3 things in one corner rather than one.
Yeah, and screaming at the top of your lungs to get it there.
Now I can just talk to him when he goes by me, right? It's phenomenal that way. And then while they're racing, they can all hear everyone cheering.
Yeah.
It's weird, but
it's
cool
fun
at the same
for
time.
them, yeah. And like we've talked about going that route. I've talked with you, and we're very adamant about pushing that route now. But they're making a big entrance, and
they have their place, right? I don't think that they have a place with like a trail rider family because you can't hear them. You don't know where they were, right? They don't last long enough, and the power delivery is totally different. I don't think they replace a motor-driven bike.
I agree.
They're just a good secondary teaching tool, but it's definitely not a first thing, and I don't think that will get replaced, if that makes sense. They fit a certain niche need, and outside of that, it's not so much, right? So I don't think it's ever going to replace motor-driven bikes in our sport.
Well, it's like you see it, motor racing, car racing. They now have the hybrid technology. All the cars now are having the hybrid boost. Mm-hmm. There is the Formula E series, and yes, they go to all these exquisite places, but it's nothing. But if you look at Formula One, they're 45% of power on hybrid. IMSA has hybrid technology. NASCAR's talking about putting hybrid technology. IndyCar in 2024 will be adding a hybrid. So they're all adding it, but we all like the sound. There's nothing like going to Indy 500 and listening to them warm up in the morning. Yeah. I mean, I'm sorry, there's nothing like listening to those cars.
We all miss two-strokes, right? Yeah. There's nothing like two-stroke premix, in race gas. You know,
Yeah.
I had bean oil back in the day.
Oh my God!
Woo!
The smell of glory. Yeah, it's an up and coming thing. It's gonna, of course, it's gonna come into the sport. Period.
Yeah.
It's already made its introduction here, and it's gonna grow. So it's gonna play a factor into things.
I would love for them to make the futures class more of a 125 class. It's just that they can't get the 2 strokes into California.
Yeah.
And they refuse to give up the Anaheim round of that.
Yep.
Yeah, no,
It's tough.
I agree. I think that's a platform that has been lost, and you see it over in Europe. Still, they're doing it, and I think that's a great learning curve. But I can't imagine. I mean, I started off at 30 years old on a 125 because I'd never ridden before, and I'm like, I don't want to kill myself.
I love riding one.
Yeah,
It's like
Yeah.
the old.
That's fun.
Yeah, it doesn't get much better than
Yeah.
wringing a 125's neck off.
Yep.
You know?
and they're the easiest thing to take care of.
Yeah.
So easy to take care of.
Cheap, efficient.
I am not mechanically inclined, and I changed the top end on my 125.
4 strokes have made the sport really challenging to afford for a lot of people,
Yeah.
man. It's way more money, way more stuff.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard.
And that's kind of where our podcast stemmed from, was, you know, the business of what supports what we do, especially what we do. And, you know, with the kids, it's even more expensive, just because it's bike after bike after bike. Then we're lugging the kids, we're buying toy haulers, I mean, you're in it just as deep as me, and that's why you're here, and we know what it's like. It's
Bought a motorhome this year.
Yeah, it's
We're like
stressful.
6 bikes deep.
Yeah.
You know, it's a lot. You know,
It's-
and C50 is
not
Go-
cheap.
Woo!
Not cheap.
barrels of it already.
Yep.
All right, we're gonna probably continue that part on. We got to get into some of the race.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hit the race.
All right, 250 Denver Supercross round 16. This is the coronation of Jet. Hunter's won his championship. Now it's time for Jet to win his. So let's go. 250 Heat 1. What do we got for notes?
258 one was all right. We jump in there. Max Volan right off the bat just about goes over the bars. He's been making so much progress over the year, or over this season, and then that was a little scary moment, but he come back from it. Derek Kelly, you know, talking about lower level riders, was looking really, really good out there, and I was impressed with his ride. And, you know, Levi Kitchen went out, did what he's been doing all season.
Why was he wearing a over the top chest protector? Is that a thing he's done all season, or is it?
I don't think.
The past couple rounds, I think he's.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just injury, maybe.
I think a big push for him is the swap over to Pro Circuit next year. I think that kind of like breathed some life back into him, and he was coming out hard pressing.
Yeah.
Okay,
for
so
that Heat win.
let's hit that. There was a lot of talk. I heard rumors Volan to Star.
Correct.
I've heard Shimoda to one of the Austrian brands, but there's no way that Japan is going to let Shimoda. So now I've heard Honda. I've heard Levi. I didn't hear Levi going to.
He's going to PC.
He's going to PC,
He's going to PC.
which will be fantastic because poor Pro Circuit. They need.
Mitch has had
The rough
struggle
luck.
after struggle
Yeah.
after struggle, and I really think that gives him a good, solid podium contender next year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a good switch. I don't think Levi was happy at Star. I just something didn't gel there.
He's not.
Right?
He's not a Florida guy. He's a West Coast guy.
Well, but like, I think that program works for some of those guys, and some of those guys, for whatever reason, it doesn't necessarily fit their wants and needs out of training. And I think that the swap to PC with the pressure that Mitch provides will really drive him to be a serious podium contender.
I think
year
that bike
and
plays a
title
big part of it
contender.
too.
It does.
That, for me, I cannot ride a Yamaha. They're too wide. I'm too small of a guy to fit on the Yamaha correctly. Now,
They're narrow now.
not enough. Not enough. I've rode yours.
All right, princess.
They're still a wide bike. They have a totally different
They make
feel
up
to
for it
them.
in power.
Yeah, they all got their pros and their cons, and I think some of these guys, like at that level, it's different. But
And he's a narrow guy. If you watch him on interviews, he's not a big guy.
he's a small kid, and
I'm small too.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and
if you're not driving with a bike, you're not gonna.
Yeah.
You can ride well, but you could excel other places. And Kawasaki's always been comfortable for me. They're a very comfortable bike.
same.
Very
I've
skinny,
always been
narrow.
a Cowie Honda guy.
Yeah.
Hondas kind of sit a little bit low. The Austrian bikes are kind of skinny and taller feeling.
Yeah.
I had a chance to ride a Honda a couple months ago. My buddy's off-road. He's got a 250. What do they call theirs?
CRF.
Yeah, but the off-road version
The
of
X.
it. The X.
Yeah.
And that is the most... I've only ridden Yamahas. I hopped on that bike and I was like, wow, this thing's really comfortable from the get. Like, I was like, whoa.
They are.
This is what this bike... I was like, wow. And it's stock. It's stock with his stuff on it.
Yeah.
I was like, this bike is pretty awesome.
Yeah, and like the swap to Showa is a little bit different there. That's a little bit different.
Yeah.
Like when you get working into setting up your own suspension, that's a thing. But like, man, there's not much like a Honda, man.
No, ditching that Unicam was a big move for them.
And can we get past the point that there's weaker bikes now? The Honda and Kawasaki and the KTM brand, they've caught up. The brand, there's
it's fairly level, even with the
Yeah.
old Suzuki, man. Like I know it's the kickstart thing, right?
Yeah.
They're
They're
not.
just hyping that up.
I think some of it is there, but like it's really not that far behind. I mean, what we're riding on, 3 years after a date is full A-kit suspension. Like things have progressed up so much that there's not that much difference. It's preferences, like you said.
I interrupted you. Any more notes on Heat 1 for you?
No, that's really all I got. I mean,
What about you?
Yeah, I was just really impressed with Levi Kitchen, man.
A
He
solid
showed
ride.
tenacity, right? He's hungry for it rather than just letting it go by.
Yep, and that's what we've noticed with him as the second half of the season progressed. He's really out there digging for it. So
Yeah.
I'm happy with the way he's riding, and I do think this pro circuit move is going to be big for him. I think next year he's going to show a lot. There's going to be a lot of him. RJ Hampshire. It's gonna be a good season. The 250s, I believe.
Yeah.
The only note I had, and it was just one of those things I kind of noticed watching, since we're watching with intent now versus just being a fan, I really liked that there were so many different options in the rhythm lanes. There were guys doing inside, outside, railing versus singling to over table. Like, there was a lot of different rhythms, and I noticed that right off the get-go.
It was a well-built track for being as hard pack as what it was.
And they could
developed,
change up their lines.
It developed really nicely, it seemed.
It was definitely a hard track.
But it was like mitigating risk. I think that was what made them choose different lines, was mitigating risk.
And I noticed that literally on the first gate 250 Heat 1, I was like, wow, there's actually some variety. And that was the 250 guys, and not all the top guys. It was guys just kind of feeling their way around, which leads us into 250 Heat 2 and having to use those alternative lines. Go first.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was really blown away that Jet jumped in there and fell off of that start. I couldn't believe that he pushed that hard in on just a heat race. Yeah, right. And like it's a heat race. Like you need to calm down. Like that you're gonna motor through those guys, right? And it was so slick that everybody was pushing wide on that start. You know that they're gonna come over into you. It just, I think through the night, as it progressed, he really calmed that back down. Especially after going back and talking to the team, right? That kind of put things in check. It was really good to see Mumford like really fighting for that slot, right? It's a fill-in ride, attack, right? That's the type of stuff that Mitch likes to see, right? And that's what you're there for. You're there to compete, to push the limits, and get it done. And that was really, really good to see.
And I'm in agreement with Jet. As we know, I'm a big fan of Jet. I love his riding style, but he should be in full championship mode. So there should have been a lot of slack right there, because he could have messed up everything.
Patience.
Right there.
What about when they're falling? And we watched this, I think, 3 or 4 times. His hand, had the hand not gone through the bike, got stuck in that wheel.
Yeah, broke it.
I'm like, dude, like you're 15 minutes away from glory.
And that's what I'm saying.
And
like
how easy is that to do, right?
Yeah.
It's so simple.
Yeah, like a toe, man. I mean, the slightest thing can happen, and I think, like you said, you get back to the truck. I think there was a good talk because he was pushing way too hard when there was absolutely no need to push at all.
I told Michelle, I said he should just let the gate drop let everybody go, and see how many guys he can pick off.
He's going to catch on pretty much every one of them.
I mean, he had to just finish the race and he wins. Like
Yep.
it's like, just don't worry about it. You'll get top 9.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, his whoop speed, that was one of the things. I'm watching whoop speed, I'm like, holy moly, like, whew.
And you could tell that they were all trying to be super quiet through the whoops, right?
Yes.
Because you could see them wheel spin and then miss a couple, right?
Yeah.
And it got
They
heart
were
rate
slick.
spiking, right? All those types of things. I think going back to Mumphy, he kind of rode looking backwards rather than forward after a minute, right?
Yeah.
Like he proved that he could be there. And then he was just really worried about Enzo.
Yeah, and I'm in agreement with that because when he gets up to the lappers, and that's where Enzo showed his more veteran skill set because he took that opportunity when he made that pass on Mumford, and Mumford should have known to block that off, but obviously with the not rookie but rookie enough.
And Enzo, I don't think has the racecraft that Mumphy has.
Yeah.
But he's got more raw speed right now. So all Mumphy had to do was just look forward, and it wouldn't have been a thing.
Yep, he's racing behind him.
Yep.
And you got to race forward. And we've talked about that 100 times. I teach my kids that. You got to look forward. Don't look at me. Don't look who's beside you. Don't look backwards. Just follow what's in front of you. And I think that could have changed the race a lot. But because of that, the lapper slowed him up. He got in his own head. Lopes seen it, and he took full advantage.
And I will say, I also feel like Lopes is being groomed by Phil Nicoletti, and Phil is a tough New Yorker guy. And you have Latin American, I'm going to get what I'm going to get. I used to coach them. I used to coach Latin Americans. They are a different culture. Very different culture. The passion, I see something I want, I've never had it, I'm going to go get it. I'm also being coached by this guy who hates me but loves me. So,
he has to.
Yeah. So like, there is like a double thing going on there.
Yeah.
I was super proud for Lopes. I mean, that you can see the culmination of this kind of coming throughout the year. Also proud of Oldenburg. Like,
me too, man. That was on my notes.
Yeah.
It
It was sneaky. Like, it was so quiet. They didn't show him on the broadcast at all. But if you watch his lap times, he was just smooth and consistent through it all. Just nice, solid ride.
And I would say, like, there's not a lot of, as much as there has been in the 450, the 250 class is kind of what the 250 class has been.
Yeah.
And it was kind of good to see some of these guys kind of get up in the mix. And like you said, I think Mumphy's solidifying himself. Oldenburg, he's always going to do Oldenburg things, but this was a great ride.
He lacks the raw speed.
Yeah.
He really needs to go home and work on those sprint laps, and pushing that envelope, because that's what progressed Enzo this year.
Did we
if you look at Enzo last year, it was the same thing, right? Now he's pushed that up and elevated that.
But it's also, we'll get into this maybe later, but I'm not one of those, I don't think you need to train with 17 people, but if you can push yourself. But Enzo has been able to train with, you look at the guys he's getting to train with, those guys are pushing him every single day.
Yeah.
There's a great amateur program up there at their facility. Their pro team's good. Who's Oldenburg training with? Maybe we need to send him back to Texas to make him start building fences again and see if that'll clean him up. I mean, maybe he needs to start training with Cartwright. But he needs, like you said, he needs a little bit of that push. But yeah, he's good. It was. I was proud of those guys.
I think he's just always been in a tough spot.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And like, he's the working man.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And he goes in there and gets the job done. He never quits. He's solid. It's just lacking that raw speed.
Yeah. Just needs a shove.
So how do we feel about Lopes? Like, he got his first heat victory. And I always go back to Michael Lessie. Crying on the podium, getting a heat, and everybody made fun of him. To me,
It's an emotional moment.
I feel like that's a culmination. I don't care. I mean, to me, it's like that guy, he didn't know what to say.
It shows your passion for the sport. And
anybody that's raced to any kind of level knows how hard you work for things, right? But most never get to that point, right? Like, and to be able to stand up there with that, it's raw emotion, man.
I mean, it's pure. Like that's what you strive for. Maybe it's just a heat to some people watching, but they literally. I mean, if you look at our level of racing, like what we give up for our kids to get that that win. So this is what they do for a living. They literally give up everything.
They've given up their lives.
Their livelihood has changed. I mean, he moved from Brazil to come here to follow a dream.
Anybody that's raced knows how many years of work for the hope to make it to that level, right? And it's still a hope at that point, right?
And had he said what he wanted to say, they would have had to edit it off TV.
I'm sure.
Because he will drop the F-bomb faster than anybody.
He will.
So
you might get a bit of that from Phil.
Yeah. The fact that he held his tongue and just couldn't think of the right words. But I get a little tired of the general public saying, dude, it was just a heat race. Yeah, man. It's a heat race. It's still big. It's still big. I can tell you right now, Moran's, when he got the whole shot in the heat race, he could have parked it after the first corner, and he would have been happy finishing 22nd. Yeah, so it's just on where you are. But so that was 250 heats. Nothing drastic happened, minus Jet's little kerfuffle there at the beginning, but then he qualifies in. We can still do the coordination. So we get to 450 heat 1. Go.
450 heat 1 was just kind of a heat. I mean,
I felt like that was both 450 heats.
Yeah,
to be honest, there really wasn't that much action in any of them.
takes the win. Carnow actually transferred into the main and not going to the LCQ, but I really have.
I was impressed
special.
by Colt Nichols, right?
Yeah.
Comes out racing.
Colt Nichols has been putting in good rides.
Man, he's really been impressive this year for his, main year stepping up, doing all that stuff. He's been really, really good this season and pretty darn consistent.
Yeah.
And he's a good-looking man.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and you can't go wrong with a Colt 45 nickname,
By the way, since we don't have a lot, how about Suzuki, Chisholm, and Roxon with the whole shots out of the gate? I mean, hey, they may have to kickstart him, but boy, they can get out of the gate because that was Suzuki front row right
Both
there.
of them can ride.
Yep.
Period.
I think the only thing I have for Heat 1, it was great to see some other names up front. I thought that was cool. That was the whole 450 class has been decimated, but it was cool to see.
That gives these guys a chance to shine.
To make a name, yeah. And also the last thing I had was, man, we'd only had 2 heats. We're in 450 Heat 1, and I was looking at the whoops, and Michelle and I both looked at one another and goes, are those concrete? The whoops look like concrete.
Yeah, they were solid.
Oh.
All the 450 guys talked about going through third and just idling through, right? And anytime they got into it, they'd just wheel spin or skip across a few and get scared.
They were wicked.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen some gnarly whoops this year, big. But these things were pretty moderate, but they were hard as a rock.
I'm about it. If we make these things super daunting and challenging like they once were. Whoops used to be way gnarlier than what they are now, right? And if we do that, they'll back the power back down because they need to make it rideable, right? Yeah. I mean, that's why so many of these guys want things detuned. I mean, look at Chisholm last year riding basically a stock bike with some power sucked out of it, right? It didn't have power added to it; it was sucked out.
Chisholm's been one of those point blank tell you, I run pump gas. I run pump gas. I don't need anything else. So you guys didn't have much for Heat 1. Heat 2. How about the Denver crowd loving some Eli? Holy cow!
That's literally all I've got.
Oh my God, they were that. I've been to Supercross. I've heard.
Yeah.
The fact that you could hear them over the announcers was amazing.
You could barely hear Ricky talk, and that was awesome. I've been to countless Supercross races. I can't count on my fingers how many races I've been to, but it's always loud. But that was. When
impressive.
When the mics on the cameras suck in all that, and they're sucking that in the booth, it's deafening.
And that booth's enclosed.
Yeah,
it's not one of the old school
stadiums.
It's
It's a sound booth. I mean, that's what it's designed for, and you could hear them through that. It was impressive.
It's cool. The
only note I had was, good Lord, did Tomac and Sexton just leave everybody? Was there anybody else in this race?
Sexton was moving.
And Sexton knows the job that he has to do at that point, right? He's motoring out. The one thing that always bums me out about this is Eli's not worried about Chase,
No.
right?
No.
And you know, Stewart commented about that, you know, time and time again, right? All season, right? Eli is not scared at Chase. He needs a little bit of that Cooper Webb in him, where he's going to get in there and show you the business.
Yeah.
Not to the point of knocking him down, but to show some fear. And that's just lacked. But those dudes checked out. I mean, Chase's raw speed.
If the championship was a little bit, you know, if the tables were turned on the championship, Tomac's still he's not a shover by any means. He rides solid.
Yeah.
But I think if the tables were the opposite way, you might see.
But Chase is more protective about Eli than Eli is about Chase.
Exactly. You might see a different Eli where he starts pushing and shoving a little bit, you know, on Chase. But I don't know. I really don't know.
I don't think they're going to ride like that. I think that they're both riding and racing clean. But Eli's not scared of Chase when he comes in on it, right?
No.
He's still going through the corner with speed,
Yeah.
which, I mean, why is Barsha so good at passes, right? Because he's going to shut you down and make it to where you can't come back to him.
Well, if you look at the top 4 guys,
and most people get nervous when Barsha comes around.
Yeah. And
Tomac, Sexton,
isn't that way.
Tomac, Sexton, Cooper, and Roxon. They could go an entire series and never touch anybody. Until you get to Barsha, that's where you get in. Barsha Anderson. But like Cianciarulo, he's not going to touch anybody.
No.
He doesn't want to. So like those top 4 guys, there is I also think it's the chip on the shoulder in different of Barsha. I think they have the chip on the shoulder of, I'm the best. I don't need to touch you.
I think it's how they came up racing. I mean, it's just a different
riding
mentality.
styles.
It's a mentality difference,
Yeah.
right? And like you either have that or you don't.
Yeah. And as a side note on this heat, because like you said, they just kind of happened. We got to give a little shout out to Justin Hill. Dude has put in some great rides all season. He's taking a benefit of what's happening. Gets a third in the heat and just like no big deal. And he looks good on the bike. I mean, the guy has style for days anyway.
Yep.
But he looks good on the bike.
Yeah, it's honestly surprising with that program that they put together, you know, and he's doing really good with it, man.
So
I enjoyed it.
We made it through the heats. Before we get any further, Kenny's gear, FXR's gear, and Fly all had purple. Is there something going on in Denver that
Bran asked me the same thing because the new A-Star boots coming out were purple.
Yeah.
That's their new lightning gear, whatever they want to call it. But she's like, is there a
are the Denver Nuggets purple?
is there a style tonight? I'm like, no, I think it just happened, like coincidence.
They set those things out like months in
Yeah.
advance, right? So like 2 brands coming out with the same thing, like that doesn't really happen.
Because that was weird. Like there was like,
But-
wait, all purple gear.
You have Alpine Stars, they want to coordinate and do that with Alpine Stars,
Yeah.
and that you see that stuff happen sometimes.
Because it was wild. I was like, I haven't seen this much purple gear in a long time.
It's just kind of coincidental type of stuff. I mean, they all have to showcase their gear at the same time.
And the Fly gear was too purpley for me.
It was very. I did not. I can't imagine those the numbers, the sublimated gold numbers on the back.
Yeah.
I feel like, and I'm sure everything's modern now. I think about when I was a kid wearing my soccer jersey and having that number stick on the back. Like,
well, they're all dye sublimated for the pros,
Yeah.
so it's just the fabric. It's just
Yeah, you
printed
don't feel
in.
it.
You don't feel anything. There's nothing there. It's just the color. of
it just
fabric.
looked that
Yeah.
gold with the purple. I'm like,
Yeah.
this is a little different. Hey, look, there we go. Equestrian professional.
Yeah.
We're gonna dive in. We made it through the heats. Track is concrete. RC even talked about traction. Then for the LCQs, they groomed the track. The track actually looked pretty good. Obviously, it looked like one of the California test tracks with the groove line. I was amazed the groove line. They could kind of hop into that line, and there was no berm, but there was a berm.
Yeah. There was enough to hold a sidewall.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what they rode on. And jumping into the 250 LCQ, Hunter Yoder was putting in some serious moves.
Man.
After going down with Jet, he was in that Jet kerfuffle there, in the heat, and then that kid was riding. Like,
he's progressed so much this season.
I enjoy watching him ride.
I don't know what happened between the 2 previous seasons, but he's actually progressed mid-season this year, which is cool to see.
Yeah.
I want to like him. I want to because he was one of those kids that kind of got shoved aside when the whole Geico Honda thing
Yep.
happen, and he's kind of like you said, he's
It
kind of
sucks.
been wandering.
Yeah, because he was riding amateurs for Amsoil, the Geico Honda team, and then you didn't hear really anything. I mean, you heard about him, but you didn't, and then he's kind of making his comeback now, and he's really putting his foot down and making a statement at this point.
But
Those are the guys that got screwed by that late
Yeah.
coming out of that,
Yeah.
right? It wasn't really the pros. The pros were going to find the spot. It's the AMs that really got
But he
the
did.
short stick.
He made some moves in that LC. Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, I was
That was
watching.
awesome.
Like he was in ninth, and all of a sudden he was in third, and I went, "What happened?" Like it was like one lap.
I was really bummed by Slosher.
Oh, I've got.
Dude goes for the transfer spot and puts it on the
He
ground.
had the speed to pass 2 or 3 of them guys.
Yep.
If he was just patient.
Yep.
Come on, man.
They just it's the LCQs. They shove their way in. Adrenaline.
But we're at altitude.
Yeah.
The track's slick.
Calm down.
Just chill, man.
Yeah.
So I have to say, you'll understand. You don't know the battles I've been battling. I learned to ride, and then I've been relearning how to ride.
Mm-hmm.
And my note for Slosher, you'll appreciate this. I know how Slosher feels because I've been working on staying centered on the bike and rotating the bike versus my body. And Michelle and I are watching, and she's like, "Oh no," because we also play fantasy. She's like, "Oh no," and so I'm like, "Hold on, we have to rewind that." We rewound it. We watched it again. I'm like, we watched it again, and she's like, "That's what you do," because he got his weight off to the right, and the bike started going, and the front end washed, and I'm like, "That's what we're trying to fix."
Maybe your wife should have been on tonight.
So that
You've been in
feeling,
trouble.
that feeling, and she's like, "That's what you look like. That's what happens. That's what happens." And so like when that happened to him, I was like, "That's what I'm battling right now," and I understand exactly what he felt, and you feel so badly because it means everything to these guys.
But he knows better.
Yeah.
He knows better, and he knows if he
You've
would
been
have
in
just
enough LCQs
Yeah.
by this point to know you have plenty of time left.
His balance started going though 2 whoops before the end.
The fatigue set in
Yeah.
for those guys pretty hard.
Yeah.
Definitely. And then, but to me, that's more of a reason to let it play out because you know you're going to get them.
Yeah.
Just,
Yep.
that's what I said. I think we can't see that mentality. I mean, as a racer, we can, but that racing's a different style of racing,
And one of
much
the-
more intense. But I think he should have just.
And one of the
Settle down.
goals of this podcast is that we want to learn that. I want to go talk to those guys that are 30th in the night and that they're making mains or they're making night shows and not, because I want to know that mentality of, one, why the hell are you doing this? 2, what do you see yourself doing? Those kind of nights where you're on the bubble. Like that's the kind of stuff, because your kids, not me, but your kids may at some point decide if they ever get to that point they're good enough, they may want to try it, and you're like, why? Like why?
No, not at all. We're racers.
No. I agree.
If you say why, you gave up already.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just push the envelope and go.
Yeah.
But I want that answer, because I dealt with that in the tennis world. Of I had guys that were good enough to go pro. They were good enough, but they also knew the problem, so they decided to go the professional route with business versus pros. So
Look at my shoes. I broke how many bones in my life?
That's where I was
And
going.
you've asked me, why you still do this? Because that's all I know. That's what I know.
I've broken everything.
Yeah.
Right?
Agreed.
And I've only just now crossed this page where I don't know, is past it yet, but where I don't need to go out and ride my brains out.
We just
right?
talked about this.
He's not there yet.
I know. That's my point.
We just talked about this last week.
I know.
I said, and you've listened. Yeah, I mean, you listened to all these, and I finally hit that point where I'm at Dade City, even this week, and I'm like, they did change that track up. I'm like, that would be cool to ride that, but I didn't feel the need to get on my bike at all.
How about ride it versus, because there's a difference.
There's a big
That's
difference.
it.
Massive
So
difference.
would you go out and
ride
it?
I am at the point now, and you both would be proud that I feel no urge to race. I don't want to line up. Like, I watched these kids. Dade City was a mess this weekend, and we'll talk about it. There were so many spills in the whole shot and the plowing through the gates. And
Let's get into it then. Just
yeah,
there's so much to
we
talk
will.
about.
But I'm looking at that and I'm like, I don't want to do that.
No,
I
I occasionally ride like the Saturday morning school just because I look out there and I go, oh man, I need to ride that for a minute. But then that's enough. And I don't need any
That's what
more
I did
than
the
that.
last time.
You
And
know?
the last time that I rode it, I was still out riding good, but I had a rough night. Yeah, we got Danny's fifth wheel all stuck, and my truck was stuck. And I don't know, I was just tired the next morning. I'm like, it wasn't for me. And then from that point on, I don't know what switched. But, Bone got better at that point. We had that throttle stick on our old PW, and I think that something flipped a switch, and now I'm like, I'm full moto dad at this point. I just
moto dad life.
Yeah.
And like,
I want to ride, but I don't want to race.
I only care about progressing my son.
And
and like for me to get on a bike, it's just a bonus that I even got to swing my leg over.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I see that.
But to watch the kids progress, I think is what really. When your kids go from like last and now they're riding, anywhere from fourth to second, then you're like, your focus it's like tunnel vision. It's the tunnel vision of racing, but it's like through your kid. It's strange. It's hard to explain. But
yeah. Let's get back to this.
Get back into it.
As we divert around here, we're gonna get back. I'm gonna start off the 450 LCQ with this of anything is possible, because I've been following motocross for years, listening to podcasts. There was a time that this name that I'm about to say would have never been brought up on a professional broadcast, and the fact that they mentioned Steve Mathis in the LCQ challenge and that Cartwright won $20,000 on a race on Friday that this man had put together, I just look at it as, if you stick in something long enough and you have good intentions, even if you are kind of a butthole, trying to be nice so there's less editing, even if you are a butthole, at some point, if you speak the truth and just say what you feel and do right.
Well, I'll give you the ammo. It does help that Supercross and motocross are now together, and he is a part of Racerette.
Yep.
That is true.
That is how that deal got
That is
done.
true, but he did it last year before.
Yep.
And they give him a raise.
But they were already in talks.
Yeah. But the fact, that's really all I have, is that they had a great conversation. The LCQ was what the LCQ was.
Yeah.
But the fact that they actually talked about a couple podcasts.
I wish they would have talked about that LCQ challenge a little bit more. And like, I know the challenges of trying to get it filmed and all that, but like a little clip of here or there, like stick one camera down there just to have something and
give us a little insight on it.
Well, explain to the, like, we know it,
but
the casual viewer had no idea what they were talking about.
No, and like the Simonson haircut.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Like, that was wicked. But the average person is just watching it as a fan, and they're like, what?
There's no context.
This makes no sense.
While we're on this subject, I've been thoroughly happy with the guy on the broadcast, right?
Yeah.
Daniel Blair is doing an incredible job, and
we talked about this last week.
I wish they would turn him loose and allow him to play both roles a little bit, because I think he could handle it. And JT's really filled in nicely. Like, I wish they'd stop taking outside people into our sport, because it's such a niche sport.
Well,
and I think they're starting to figure that out.
I'm guessing, there was a lot of subtle things on this broadcast that I heard.
Correct.
One, Hunter going to go race with his brother in 450s.
Yeah, that was, and they were very, very brief about it.
Yeah,
like,
okay,
snap a finger, you miss it.
Yeah, and then Ricky did the Indy 500. I actually asked my wife, I'm like, did they ship that milk out there? Like, because that was in Denver. That was in the Denver Stadium. And then Lee says, hey, what are you doing reading promos? And Ricky's like, you better watch out. Because I'm like, are we about to find out that maybe next year Ricky is Lee and Daniel is Ricky?
Correct.
Or vice versa? I'm like,
or are they going to bring Bubba in?
And see, I hope they don't on the Bubba. I think the third commentator for Bubba fits.
Yes.
But I really think Daniel Blair has earned that slot, and
Yeah.
I think he can do a really good job if they let him play both.
It sounded weird because Lee was like,
it did.
Lee was like, what are you doing? And Ricky kind of played it off, and I thought,
I think that's been coming though. Like,
yeah,
Ricky is good, but
he's gotten way better.
And
he sucked.
Yeah,
he sucked real bad.
He still has some times where he sucked.
Yeah,
but
there's some stuff that
better.
he says that is like why, but he's learned to be a commentator and not a racer, I think, and him and Bubba both, like, they have this insight, and that, like you said, that's what we need in this sport. Like, Ralph Shaheen was an amazing commentator. He knew about the sport, not like these guys do. You know?
The problem is that Feld, and we can get into that a little bit. I have a little bit of a connection to the upper end of Feld.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, every now and again. But they've always been a show promoter, not a sport promoter, right? And they're constantly trying to cater to the casual fan, and you can't do that much. You need to treat it like a sport, not a show. Yeah.
Because a lot of us that are in it for the sport and not
you lose them.
We have, I'd say, probably half of the motocross audience is probably just, you're the crazed fan, but you get 50% is a big number when it comes to guys like us that know the racing, and that's a massive part of all your audience, your TV, being there in person. It's I'm in agreement with you. They promote what makes them the money, which is smart on their end, but
it's just what they've always done, right? And they're really successful at it.
But
they're
this sport,
very good at it.
Yeah,
they are.
Yeah. But this sport is different. It's much different than their broad spectrum.
Correct.
Well, I mean, if you're talking about broad spectrum, they own every monster truck, and then Disney on Ice, Marvel on Ice, all those other things that is pure entertainment versus a sport that actually
it's much different.
They came from the circus,
yeah.
Right? And that was their pride and joy and their love,
yeah.
Right?
And we're much different than every one of those.
I mean, it kind of is a circus, but it's a real life drama happening.
And I think they've done a really good job, like taking ownership of it, working through some of that. Like, I really think that they have progressed and made it more of a sport again. From where they kind of started with it, because I don't think they really knew everything about it.
I agree.
And Kenny Feld admitted that, right? Like, and they were trying to work all that out.
I totally agree.
Let's this is gonna, just FYI, we're an hour in.
That's fine.
This is gonna be a long episode tonight, just because we're having fun. We got extra comments, and we haven't even made it through the mains yet. We're gonna fly through the mains, and then we're gonna get to Dade City, and we may throw in some other.
Yeah, we got a lot to talk about. Let's just jump into the mains. The LCQ was okay. 250 main was, Jet got a terrible start. I don't know. I think he was pushing and pushing in the heat, and then he gets a terrible start in the main. I think all the 4-time champion, now 4-time, 3-time at that point. I don't know if it was getting in his head. I mean, you knew you had it wrapped up. So his start was. Could have screwed himself again. Like, why put yourself in that situation? Jump out there, take the lead, then let the guys pass you. So that was one of my big things. What do you got? I mean, I got lots more, but
I wonder how much down on power they were, because Dan Truman from Git wasn't there this weekend. He kind of took this one off. He had something to do with his daughter. So like, I wonder how much tuning ability they really put into things this weekend. So I think that might have been like a small piece, but like the 450 guys were still able to be there, so that may not have been a piece. Maybe he was just trying to be safe. But I think it showed some patience that he lacked in that heat race, right? Maybe they just over-talked that, and he just kind of came out and like plugged through his laps.
Yeah. I'll say at one point I watched him come that little. They jumped the finish line. They kind of came across. At one point, he was like an 8th or 9th or something, and I watched like him actually kind of like shake his head. Like, almost like, okay. Like, he literally, you can see it where he just kind of, like, okay, I'll get through here. And then all of a sudden, once he got spaced out, he was fine.
He knew that with the altitude, those guys were going to get tired, and he wasn't.
Yeah.
Like, it was no big deal. Halfway through, he put the motors on.
And he's extremely fit.
Yeah.
I mean, he's one of the most fit riders out there. But I think the big talk's the Hampshire and Kitchen, because... we already know Jet was taking the championship unless something terrible happened, which, it does happen, obviously. But Hampshire and Kitchen had a good race. And we talked earlier, Kitchen was putting in an awesome season. He put in an awesome heat race. and he really put the pressure on Hampshire the whole time until he ran out of real estate, which totally screwed him. But those two were. It was a phenomenal race for the little bit that we had of it, and I love seeing that, and I love seeing RJ Hampshire's story is awesome, and for him to bring home the win and take that big trophy to his daughters, because all his daughters get the trophies, which is cool as shit.
Yeah,
I mean, he's in it for the right reasons.
He is. He's an awesome human being. I've known him since he was a little kid on
Yeah.
P-Dubs. I grew up riding at their house,
Yeah.
and it's truly awesome to see him succeed.
Mhm.
And that family's legacy. They've had so many people through the pros, between his sister, his dad, his cousins.
I bought his dad a beer at the WWGP
Yeah,
when RJ won. I bought
Yeah.
his dad a beer.
Ricky's a trip.
I'm gonna jump back a little bit. I think Volan. I'm proud of him. He had a great start because he's kind of coming into his own, and he had a rough go. Like he got thrown out there early. People have been bagging on him.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even think Roger likes him.
I think the move to Star. My note was the move to Star is going to totally help
Yeah.
his
Yeah.
entire program
Yeah,
because
and-
I think they've given up on him.
I think great start. I will say, Levi's slide job to pass him. Oh, that was a great move. I wrote that down. Like, nice move by Levi on Volan. That was a great move. I'm with you. RJ catching up. RJ ran out of room, and then RJ did. He's been doing okay. Yes, the mud race in New Jersey, whatever. I think it was New Jersey. That was just one of those. We all would have done the same thing, slide and not. But he's actually kind of had a mellow season.
Yeah.
Which has been good. I think he wanted to get through healthy,
Yes.
and put together a full, good podium finish every weekend season.
Yeah.
And I just think for that split second, when they got side by side and he pushed himself, Levi did nothing wrong.
But at the end, Hampshire said he hit neutral, and
But that was after the corner. I think he needed to ride a little bit more like a veteran. But if
Yeah.
he hadn't have caught neutral, I think he would have made that jump with him. It just would have been tight.
Yeah.
And that's where, you need to pick and choose. And, the mistake happened from Levi.
Yeah.
But Levi made it back up. And he just needs to check up and say, I know I'm faster than him. I'll get him again.
Yeah.
But that was the one thing that with RJ is, had he not hit neutral, what would have happened? Because the kitchen was pretty tight on that double. I think that would have been fine.
I think Levi would have choked up.
Very
and gone,
possible.
Woo, we're tight.
Yeah.
And RJ would have committed.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's what RJ does.
From knowing RJ,
Yeah.
right? That's going to happen.
But I will say on both their parts, they both had good composure. RJ bounced off. Levi kept going.
Yeah.
Now, the one thing Levi did do was, I think he kind of started looking back a little bit towards the end.
I really think it's the elevation, and maybe he got a little tired and a little
Yeah.
pumped up from the battle. And RJ just put his head down and went to work
Yeah.
because he wanted that win. He
Did what
needed
he
that
does.
win. He went to work
Yeah.
and made things happen.
Yep.
You know who I was impressed by was Lopes. He really showed composure. He really
Yeah.
wants that podium,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And there's
He
a
was-
big incentive for a podium on that team,
And
right?
he was so close.
And he didn't override. He didn't overpush it. He showed veteranness, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, 'cause-
really,
Because he, like you said, he wants it, and he knows he wants it. He says he wants it, and his dream is to get that. Just you don't hear him say, "Yeah, I want to win," but you hear him say, I want that podium."
Yeah.
And he had the opportunity. Like, he could have pushed the envelope, and he didn't. He rode his race. Jet was there. Jet come up to him, took him, and he probably could have done something about it, but he didn't. He rode with integrity. He rode with a veteran mindset, and I was proud of him.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was solid. I felt. I wish Lopes would commit and go outdoors, because
Yep.
his stock. He's one of those you would buy,
Yeah.
because he's got the skill set. The fact that he doesn't want to do it, he just wants to go to Brazil or do SMX or WSX.
he's chasing money rather than trying to chase
Yeah.
the ride and
Yeah.
progress. And that's that thing,
Yeah.
man.
So it's holding him back.
You cannot survive in America without running moto.
No,
Yeah.
You're
until
just
you've
not.
earned it.
Yeah.
Until you've earned it. And the only other thing I took away from the main, because there were some good solid rides. The only thing I took away, is we talked about it briefly, was that news they dropped of could Hunter be joining his brother.
I think he's going to move up at Supercross next year. I think that's the hint. I don't think he's going to go to 450 outdoor.
No, not in the outdoors. I think they'll keep them split. Because Jet's making his big debut and Hunter just getting a first title. I think they want him to come in and.
But I think he secretly wants to ride a 450. And
I
he's
agree.
Pushing hard at Honda to have a 450 ride.
So my question on that is the business side of that is Honda didn't want to go in house with their 250 program. They have Chance Hymas. There's rumors they're bringing in Shimoda. Are we, hey, you know what? We don't want to lose Hunter either. Let's bump him up.
I think
we'll run these two kids in 250 until they're done, and then 250 is over.
And like there might have been a change where like I really think it's going to come in January. You're going to see Hunter bump up as well.
Yeah.
and
then you'll have those two, East and West, and they'll just have two just like they did this year.
Yep.
And continue on.
Do you think that, because I feel like Phoenix is involved in a lot. Do you feel like at some point Phoenix becomes the new team for 250s?
I think Honda pushes it back to an outside source that way. Long term, they've always wanted to do it that way.
Yeah.
They don't want to put the money into 250s. There's a lot of money out in a 250 compared to a 450. Yeah, I see them outsourcing and bringing them in further. It just depends on who plays in the World Supercross versus American Motocross, right? And if they play both or not, it's politics. And I think it really depends on how this season of World Supercross plays out, right?
That's what we were talking about. I think at the end of the year is where we're going to see a lot of stuff unravel because
you'll know come October.
It's that year. It's that year where there's a lot of changes that are going to happen.
But congratulations to Jet. He gets his title. So we got Hunter, Jet. They both, congratulations. Jet's done now, and he goes to 450. And wow, I mean, honestly, with everybody out, does he not look like one of the favorites for 450?
For sure.
It looks like a Ryan Dungey year all of a sudden.
He's gonna have some sauce for him. I'll tell you that.
Even before all the carnage, I think that he was going to be a contender anyway.
He is on fire at home on the moto.
Yeah.
On fire.
The kid can ride. I mean, there is no doubt about it that we haven't seen a rise in talent like that in a long time, and the kid can ride. Period. Absolutely. Period. There's nothing else that needs to be said about it. He can ride.
Yep.
Yeah. I think so too. All right, so now my heart breaks because I'm gonna divert here for a second and say my favorite rider has always been Eli Tomac because there's nothing exciting about Eli Tomac. He races. You don't hear him about getting involved in stuff.
Cool, and collected.
He just races.
He's a worker.
Yep. He just is a grinder. He does his thing. He lives in his own world. There's nothing. You barely know who his wife is and that he has 2 kids.
Yeah.
And he lives on a alfalfa farm. And that's it. He gets the whole shot. This season is over. Like, I don't care if Sexton finishes second or passes him. It's going to be a 15-point lead minimum going into the last race. Season's over. 3 minutes in, my heart breaks, and I don't even care. I had to fake the excitement to come here and do this today because I've lost my hero.
Even if you don't like Tomac, I mean, I don't know how you can't.
You have to respect him.
Yes, he's a very respectable guy, but it was heart-wrenching for anybody.
Yep.
Because you can feel for him how he felt coming off that track. The entire team in general.
Dude, if you've ever seen anyone with an Achilles, anything, that is next level excruciating pain.
It's wicked.
And to ride straight there, that's a tough SOB.
Yeah.
Well, to hit that double after he did it,
ooh,
and then land.
Imagine that pain.
I mean, obviously you could see he lifted his leg immediately after he landed, but that's the first thing I pictured. Like, how did you do that? Like,
they say it's like feeling your calf muscle roll.
Yeah,
up.
I couldn't imagine that landing. Like that's the first thing the compression was.
Is it a rare injury? Because we don't hear about this.
Very, very rare.
It really, like with modern boot technology, that just doesn't happen all that much. And normally it's something that starts as a small injury and works its way up to a bigger one.
Even if you don't know you have it.
Yeah, it doesn't even have to be like really apparent, right? He may not have really noticed that he had some stuff. People that tear or rupture those, normally it's like a small little pain every now and again, right? But it's something that nags on and then develops into something.
So before we dive further into the 450 main, I want to touch on some of the stuff because there's reports, there's pictures, there's this. Yeah. There's, as some of the moto people say, they have the carrots in their ears. Some of these guys that are looking for clickbait or whatever, there's pictures that maybe he adjusted his boots or changed his boots or.
It's all.
Do we feel like this is just one of those rare ass injuries that just happens?
Yeah.
Yeah, and like
he's safe. He's a safe guy.
And I'm sure when Eli's ready to talk about it, he'll talk about it. But like, it's really like it's so hard to damage your Achilles that way. Like, you would sprain ankles beforehand a lot of the time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You see people that case and blow their ankles out totally, and their Achilles is perfectly fine.
Yeah.
And they build custom boots for all of those guys.
Yeah.
That's not an unnormal thing. If you go down the line of those 20 guys, there's a handful of custom Alpine Stars.
Oh, and by the way, he's sponsored by Alpine Stars, so he gets whatever he wants.
And I promise you, Eli didn't modify them.
Yeah.
They were custom built that way.
Yeah. They're designed to fit his foot. They're molded to his foot.
Eli doesn't have to go and grind on his boots.
No.
You know?
So
no,
the sad,
been there, done that. They ain't doing that.
So I got my sad part over with. I just wanted. I mean, you know, I don't have too many favorites and stuff, but this was one of my dadgummit, man. Like, I've got to find a new rider now.
I was really happy for Cianciarulo.
Oh,
Adam.
Yeah.
Yes.
Adam has worked so hard all season just to put in a full season, and here we are, one round to go. I hope he doesn't do something stupid next round.
Yeah,
but like, we made it all the way through. All that emotion on the podium.
No, look at his emotion.
Dude,
he's
like,
happy where he's at.
You know how much effort that dude did to do that, right?
Okay, let's speak on that. The emotion. I'm all for it. Kuzo, who is one of 100%'s top guys, is digging on this guy. AC even admitted, man, I know that the field is depleted. This is a corporation's, one of their top guys, digging on a dude who has been through hell and back.
Yeah.
Guess what? He survived. He's missed a couple races this year. He's made it this far, gets a podium, and you're going to take that away from him?
It's just not even fair, man. That dude has put in so much off the bike. You know, he went on a ayahuasca trip, for Christ's sake.
He's getting stem cells this week.
Yeah, right? Like, he is doing everything possible to be the best that he can be.
Yeah.
And, you know, somebody else that we can talk about is Dean Wilson. Same thing. So much mental therapy to try to accomplish all this. And, like, look at how harsh all of us are on them all, right? We're way too harsh and jumping to conclusions when they put it all of them into this, right? They're literally...
Well, Shane McElrath. He's my first note.
Same.
Great start by Shane McElrath.
Mm-hmm.
I have been like, dude, you were like 3 points away from winning a title. What have you been doing all year?
Dude,
fantastic.
Clean, smooth, right? Just solid. I know that he made a swap to Chiz's suspension setup, and that's been the big change. Kenny did that and then kind of modified it a little bit, but that was what propelled him a little bit further. That's why you're seeing this kind of late season push. But man, what a ride! Like,
great start,
solid. He's my first note as well. Solid.
He put an awesome ride, and I've always been a big fan of McElrath because he's always been just a solid rider, and he kind of lacked on it for a little while, and just going through some of the mental stuff and the bike changes and everything. But we're seeing McElrath again, and it's really exciting to see.
Yeah, and I know it's depleted, but still, if you add in all the riders that are missing, he would have finished 12th, which is still one of his highest finishes.
Yeah.
I think he would have been a top 10 guy that night with the whole field there.
He was solid. I mean,
was just
it was
solid.
an awesome ride.
And he put himself up front, right? That's what you got to do.
That start is the most important thing on the race.
The other guy that I really took note, kind of in the same way, is Dean Wilson, right?
Yeah.
He was right there, riding good, battled with the hill. Brother, and
that was actually a good battle. Did you see
it was, man. Like, they went back and forth, and he actually on one of the interviews after the race talked about he had like a big gnarly panic attack Friday night and wasn't even sure if he was going to be able to race, right?
Because it's coming to an end, and
right, and like just trying to struggle to find a ride, you
Yeah.
know, like all these types of things, right? And trying to put in good results, and he put all that together, sucked it up, and got it done,
Yeah.
and had a nice, solid ride.
And for those that don't know, he's battled the panic attack, emotional stress, mental health, and something he actually has. He calls it YouTube or YouTube or something like that. But on YouTube, he does his own stuff, and he talks about that. I mean, for those that don't know, he has a third butthole basically because
That's what I was getting ready to bring up. Is let's talk about what
he's come from.
Yeah, he put a foot peg the whole way through his butt cheek,
Yeah.
and enough that they could pack 30 feet of gauze in it after it happened.
Yeah.
And he's come back from that after not being able to sit for months on end.
Yeah.
You tell me we don't have the toughest athletes
Yeah,
in any sport.
Yeah.
yeah. I love the motocross isn't even a sport. Motocross isn't tough. Yeah, get out of here.
Yeah. No, but I'm proud of some of these guys that had the chance to shine. That we see them.
Yeah.
And they're really good. They're just, the field has been so good that they don't get the show.
It gives them a little hope,
Yeah.
and it gives us a little insight into those guys and puts them at the forefront.
Speaking of, we talked about Colt at the beginning of the podcast, and he was down. There was not one mention. What happened to him? What happened?
I'm not sure if
They didn't really show it, man.
No, and I didn't dig real deep into it. I knew what happened. He was out. He was out before Tomac, so it was.
They worked on him for a while.
It was early. I have no idea. I was gonna look it up earlier, and I ran out of time today to figure out what actually happened.
Yeah, I
to
never
him.
did either.
And
But-
we got to talk about the German chocolate.
You know, Ken Roxon.
boy.
Dude, he fell. He's last. I look up. All of a sudden, Michelle and I are sitting there on the couch, and I'm like, he was in last, right? Michelle's like, yeah. I'm like, he's in sixth.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, he's in third, and I'm like, dude,
He wanted it.
he is on it.
Yeah, he wanted it. And he's been showing that integrity for the last part of the season. Like,
And I think every season, you know, like we normally lose them earlier
Yeah.
on, right? But like here late in the season, you see rides like that because they know the field is depleted and they want that podium or that win, you know, that they've been searching for.
But,
he
be,
did-
but
and
before
it makes them put in those rides.
before the field went depleted,
He was still
Yeah.
on it.
Roxon is round 8 he slacks off. Where this year round 8 he's progressed and
Yeah.
he's just getting better and better and better. And
it's good to see him being
Yeah.
competitive, and I think that shows you how happy he truly is with their
where he's
program.
at, yeah.
And he doesn't make mistakes. I mean, I know he's had some big crashes, but he doesn't make. If you watch him ride, his fluidity, I don't know if that's even a word, is
It is not.
so good that you watch him on that track, it looked like it was cake out there. Like he was in battle.
But I think that's how he's progressed through the years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that happened when he was training with Chase and all of that, right? But he was a really aggressive rider younger on, which is why we all had such high aspirations for him. Went through turmoil, and now we're seeing the veteran, smooth rider. Let's put in the work to make us the best well-rounded rider that we can get.
And we have to, you can't help but say congratulate Sexton. He's taking what I know everybody's going to say it's the Forkner thing, but guess what? When Forkner went out and the next year he came back and won his own, they don't need to do what they did to Sexton. If he gets this, he doesn't care that everybody went out and he won. That check's going to clear. Sexton's not my favorite rider.
You got to do the full season.
Yep.
Yeah. Put all 17 in.
Yeah, it's a 17-round series. It's
Yeah.
not over until it's over.
And he's not my favorite rider, but the dude went out there on that track, 2 tracks in a row that have been slippery and nasty, and he has stood up and won.
Yeah.
I watched, there was a right-hander going to the double. He stood up on the inside line. I told Michelle, I'm like, dude, did you watch? He just literally stood up the whole corner and hit the double.
On a track that was like an
Yes.
ice skating rink.
Yes, he stood. I told Michelle, I'm like, that's skill. Like the dude, and congratulations, you're gonna get the chance. I mean, it's over. They can't give it to him because, in theory, Tomac's still gonna finish second.
Litigation.
Yeah,
Hence why I really want some race spec tires.
Yeah.
but the fact that I watched him in that heat race go around the corner, stand up on the inside on a flat corner, accelerate and hit the double, and I was like, oh, that's skill. Like that's skill.
I've always said to myself, I'd love to be. Give me like 5 laps on a factory bike.
You couldn't ride it.
I just want to see what I can do, how it feels.
I've ridden some sweet bikes in my lifetime, and they're magical.
Yeah.
I couldn't compress the suspension, so.
They're just.
But
out of this world.
congratulations to him. I'm proud. I mean, he has battled this front end issue. He's battled. I mean, they're calling him front flip, Sexton, everything. Pretty much anything. The guys put 2 races in a row together, and stayed upright on 2 tracks that could have ended his season.
Yeah.
And congratulations. And that's really all I have is because he's not my favorite rider, but dude, the guy is pretty. He really is pretty on a bike.
And he's very fit. He
hasn't gotten hurt, right?
Yeah.
And if you look at him, he's really
taking some
stocky.
gnarly hits.
He's stocky.
He's a
this
big
year.
kid. Yeah.
He's kind of gone away from that kind of Alden perspective of like you've got to be the thinnest you can possibly be.
No, he can manhandle a bike.
I really hope that RJ goes more that way. Mm-hmm. I know that he's at the Alden program, but I really hope that he puts a little bit of that weight back on because I think that he needs that durability.
Speaking of weight, have you seen? Oh dang it! What's the British guy? Anstey.
Yeah.
Have you seen him?
Yeah, he's jacked.
Yeah.
Oh, I was watching there's an IndyCar thing going on, the 100 Days of Indy. It's on CW. Just for those, they showed Newgarden. That dude looks like a linebacker because they don't have power steering, and I'm like, why don't more motocross guys look like that?
Weight makes a big difference, right? It's weight to horsepower ratio, right? And I don't know. I think we've got like that Alden theory of you have to be that lean. I think there's like a fine balance point there, but that's why you see guys falling and getting hurt, right? Sexton hit the ground a lot this season, right? Yeah. And at home, you got to think these guys do eat it at home. I know they're on one-line practice tracks, right? But they're still hitting the ground.
Yeah.
That dude has weathered through the storm.
Well, there was a report in one of the weeks Sexton hit the ground hard on a Wednesday. They didn't know if he was going to race. Yeah. But he's bouncing back. So
that's my point.
I feel like that mobility, the
same
strength,
for Eli, right? Yeah. Eli doesn't overtrain, right?
Yeah.
He was only riding. They said he was only riding 1 to 2 days a week.
Yeah, he's in maintenance mode.
Yeah, they're putting these guys through too much at this point. They've the whole Alden Baker thing. It was a good program, but they're pushing it too far, and it's burning these guys out before race day.
I really think it shouldn't be a one deal fits everyone.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of it. And I think that's where Kenny's finally gotten happy, right? He's figured out what's working for him, what's keeping his mental state in a good, healthy relationship, right? All of these things. And most of these guys get to that point. And look at Stewart, right? We're just now seeing him because he was so burnt.
Yeah.
Right? And it's taking care of every aspect of your body. I think it's cool that, guys like Adam Cianciarillo and Dean Wilson are talking about these mental battles, right? Because I'm sure you heard it as a rider growing up. It's 90% mental and 50% physical, right? Like, welcome to moto, right? But that is most of the sport. It's the mental aspect.
Yeah, the mentalness of it all ruins your day. So if you're not there, you're not there. Period. It doesn't matter how good of a rider you are. Look at Tomac. I mean, you struggle mentally. You struggle on the bike. Period. And I've been through it time and time again.
We all struggle every day.
Yeah.
You don't think that they do?
Yeah.
They are human.
They're humans, and they're treated like robots. And it takes a toll on a lot of these riders. And I love seeing them go their own ways and doing their own things. And I think it's really progressing the sport. Where there for a while they were stuck in that work, and then Saturday they're burnt.
Yeah.
And the guys are getting hurt, and I think it's getting better.
It is.
It will get better. I think it's going to get better now before it gets worse.
I think the manufacturers are having to start to look at that aspect where they haven't before, right? And they're starting to understand. Look at how much support Adam has had, through all of this. And that's why you hear him talking up there. Man, I can't believe everyone that stood behind me.
Yeah.
Because they're having to start to understand that side of stuff. Yeah. And they're investing into their riders rather than them just being a number. Yeah. And that's really good for our sport.
Yeah. Well, I agree. I think I have to go now from podcast host to podcast moderator because I don't have a horse in this fight. our pony.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about PEEWEEs in Dade City. I think it was round 7.
Yeah.
Round 7
Yeah.
of the Dade City Motocross Championship. So we're gonna go full PEEWEE now, and I'm going to listen and interject when necessary.
Take it all in.
So go. Who's going to start?
We'll let the guest go first on his weekend. They had a pretty good weekend.
We did. My boy has progressed a lot in the past month. We a little backstory on him. We've only been racing about a year. We came from a BMX background. I grew up racing motocross, all the way up till 125s. So like moto's in my blood. This is what I eat, breathe, and sleep. But we started him on a BMX track when he was 2.5, and it was easy, accessible, and he really had a blast doing it. So we stayed doing that. We raced that all around the state until about a year ago. About a year and a half ago, he got some injuries in the BMX world, and their tracks aren't dirt anymore. So they're basically like falling on concrete, and it just kind of took the wind out of his sails. So I was like, let's try the dirt bike, man. Like, you've always had one. And we kind of farted around in the yard a little bit, but like it just wasn't his thing. And then he kind of took to it, and we ran P-dubs last year and moved up to the bigger 50s this year. We've really only focused on form this year. I kind of maybe have a little bit different take there, but if your kids have good form, they're less likely to get hurt, and it's way easier to add speed after the form than try to fix the form after the speed. So the beginning of this year, all we've really worked on is form and trying to get him in good form and attacking on the bike. And now we're trying to add in some speed. So like the past month, we've really progressed that way. We recently made a swap from the KTM 50 over to a pair of Cobras.
Oh, you're screaming now.
Whew, screaming out the money. But that's been a really good change. We've really gotten suspension dialed in this past month. Like all of that type of stuff, like when you're dealing with what a 7-year-old has for feedback to you and just your set of eyes, that's a little bit of a thing. When I was a knucklehead in high school, I worked for Ronnie Monk at 612 Suspension, and his old man Ron Monk when they ran Pro Action. So I learned a tiny little bit about suspension stuff, so that's kind of helped and been fun to play around with and trying to move some stuff that way. But he's really been progressing and jumping a lot better and kind of attacking on the bike rather than just riding the bike. This week, we're running the 7 to 8 class, the e-bike class, as well as the open. So it's 3 motos. He is normally tired by the end of the night, man. He's in bed at 8:30 every night. So I think we finished at like 10:30 this week.
Ooh,
with his last moto, and so that's always a struggle. He's normally like, how many more do I have? By the end of the night. But he had a really good night, man. We were leading the e-bike class in the first moto all the way until the last lap. A fast local rider, Connor Rodriguez, went down on the first lap and kind of charged back through and overtook him on the last lap to win the first moto. He was super bummed. He thought he was gonna get it done and just let it slip through his fingers. But he like mentally reset and kind of charged through the night. Wound up taking a second place in that class again. So we went 2-2 for a second. The 7 to 8 beginner class, Jagger Craig was out, and they kind of battled back and forth all night, and he wound up second to Jagger. So that was good. Good motos, all that good stuff. We had 2 falls in both motos of the 50 Open, so we wound up like 10th in that one. But he rode really good and is showing a lot of progression. And then I took him on Sunday to Croom and went and did a whole day at Croom. First time making a trip out there as a family. And he didn't fall all day in the sugar sand all the way until the last trail ride. He had a couple of little slips, but it was good. How'd your boy do?
We did all right. I think we had the most progression we've had so far. We're in the same scenario. We started off the season as his first season. We raced a couple last year, the last 2 rounds, I believe, and we weren't sure if it was his thing. We jumped in this year, and we've talked about it all 9 episodes now.
Yeah.
And he's been progressing slowly. We bought your bike, and we bought the KTM Mini, and that has totally blown him out of the water.
It's a real dirt bike, right?
Yeah. So his progression in the last few weeks alone has been astonishing. This week we went out. He was like 5th in the whole shot. It wasn't the best start. He slipped off the gate, and we pulled a 4th in the Moto 1. He had a really solid ride. He was out there battling.
I watched that one. He looked good.
It was awesome to see. Moto 2, he come out. His mini class, he races the 4-6 mini, or the 50 4-6, and I told him, do not worry about racing. I want you to get out there and just ride that bike, because you got to learn this bike before you can race this bike.
Go have fun on your dirt bike.
Exactly. So he went out there. He was a nervous wreck with the ruts, and they're in the PEEWEE class. They're running a very well groomed track. They get a flat track. So this is his first time actually racing a solid rut track, and he went out. What I wanted to see is the parents can't go out there, and you know this. You don't know this. So the parents can't go out for the bigger 50 classes. So PEEWEE class, you can have 5 parents out on the track with him, and I always go out just because there's not a lot of parents that help the other kids, and I make sure that
I always did when my boy was on P-Dubs.
And I always make sure that I'm that parent that does help all the kids, because they're all out there trying to have fun, and there's nothing that ruins their night like going down and not being on and getting stuck under the bike and dumping fuel all over them. It's a miserable night for those kids.
The idea is for all of them to go out there and have fun.
Exactly.
Right?
And you need to come to my races so you can help me get out from under the bike.
There you go. So
I'll laugh.
My wife does.
I can't help. You're too heavy. Doesn't matter. Anyway, it's supposed to be fun for them. Though we're in competition at this point, I still like to help all of them out. Raina, she went down. Those two were battling hard the whole race, and it was awesome.
She really turned a corner this
Yes.
week, like mentally.
So-
You could see her progression. Our mutual friend Danny Yvonne, 53 Graphics.
Mm-hmm.
His little girl had an accident early on in the season.
Pretty horrifying.
Yeah,
horrifying crash.
and it kind of knocked her back down, and it's been really cool to kind of see her slowly come back.
Yeah. And it's awesome to see, because we're friends with them, and our kids are progressing together. The night that she wrecked was actually one of Bowen's first races, so they kind of got knocked. Bowen's coming in at that point. He hasn't really been a racer. We've done the yard stuff, and the yard is not for him. If there's no jumps, he's not happy. So they kind of came into it at the same time after she came back, and to watch those two battle that first moto was awesome. I actually almost knocked Bowen over trying to pick her up. So he was shooting around the corner. She come around the corner on the inside, and she went down. And my instinct was to get her up because they were racing. I wanted to see that race the whole way out. Well, Bowen come around, and I shot backwards, and he went in between us. And I'm like, oh, you idiot! And you almost put your kid on the ground trying to get somebody else up. But it was fun. We got her up. I didn't get her up in time, but second moto he went out, and Bowen was on fire. I mean, that kid was absolutely ripping.
Good.
He was 3rd the entire moto. He come out 3rd in the whole shot, rode 3rd the entire moto. He held everybody off behind him. That Saley kid come up on him a couple times, and I watched him around that finish line off camber, and I watched him pin it because he seen his front tire, and he looked down at it and he pinned it. I'm like, that boy. So we rode the entire 4-lap moto.
I think the cool thing is watching them progress and pick those little things up.
And that's my favorite thing to watch.
And that's what keeps you off of a dirt bike.
Yeah, and it is too.
That's what keeps you going.
How can I make him better? And I'm not worrying about me, what would I do in this situation, is how can I get through to him in a 5-year-old's terms. I mean, you think about it, he's 5 years old racing a dirt bike.
Yep.
That wasn't heard of when we were younger. they didn't have these fast 50s. They had the PWs, but they weren't really. There wasn't really a 50 class. You know, when I started on an 85.
No, you get one of those trail bikes with the big old fat tires, and you ride around.
Yeah, and it wasn't.
My dad bought me a Z50. You know,
exactly.
as a 10-year-old.
Yeah, that's what I started on an old Honda trail bike.
I had a Sears Craftsman scooter is what I had. Yeah.
You know, and so their progression and our progression is much different. So
spoiled.
Exactly. I say that all the time, and to put it into their perspective, like, how can I think like that? Because we never thought that way, or could I even remember thinking that way? But they don't think. I mean, so to watch him progress, I think that is what puts me off the bike.
I personally really enjoy the coach aspect, right?
And that's what he pushed. He's been pushing this for months with me. He's like, you need to be in management and not on the seat. It's
so fun, and you'll see where you'll go and help somebody else's kid, right? Yeah. And it's an outside perspective, but they once they get to know you, they respect your opinion, right? And maybe more so than their dad at that moment in time, or it's just a different perspective than their dad, and it's really cool when you see the light bulbs go off.
Kevin and I both sat under a 10-2 races ago, and we worked on a 65 for an hour maybe. You know, this kid was struggling, and the dad really doesn't know anything about bikes. You know,
is his name Trey?
No, I don't think.
No,
he didn't look too familiar to you, but something like this. But the dad had no intellect with a bike whatsoever. So you know, Kevin was up helping me because we were struggling on the bike that day. We just had so much going on. We had family there, and what's cool about our sport is I didn't worry about our troubles. I seen he was having troubles, and he was there. We seen he was having troubles, and we went over there.
Yep.
You know, I can work on my bike. That's not a problem.
I laugh every week. I personally go up and camp out Friday evenings at Dade City, and I normally do a lot of my bike maintenance for the next day.
We try to, but unfortunately, we're unable to do that right now.
Yeah. So Saturday morning, I don't go out and ride very often, but I always, whether it's this week was the Cicerettis, we're rebuilding a motor. I helped Danny do a clutch. Last points round was the Laternos working on something over there. Yeah. And we're all trying to help each other, right? And it takes a village in order to make this deal happen, and we all want to see our kids battling, right? It doesn't matter who wins tonight. It's great when the kid beside you wins. You know, and they think it's great when your kid wins.
Yeah, our kids love to come down to Declan and give him a high five every time, even if he's second. Yeah, did he win? I'm like, no, he got second. I'm gonna go give him a high five. Okay, let's do it.
And that's sportsmanship, right? Yeah. And we're trying to build well-rounded humans, right? It's not necessarily all about racing. It's life skills for later on in life, right? Yeah. And it's business skills. I've never met a motocross rider that's not successful in business ever. Because we teach you how to be that way through the sport.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, there's a select few parents there that aren't like that, and it.
Yeah, but those normally never last because
they're too pushy, and they push the kids right out of it.
Yep.
And it sucks to see, but
my kiddo had a sit down with me and his mother, you know, and 2 weeks ago, it was right after the last points round, and talking about burnout, and I was like, man, it's 7, you know, and okay, how do we need to do this? And we laid things out in a different mindset, and he was like, oh, I didn't realize it was for a reason. Well, yeah, I want to stay on that program then.
Yeah.
And he was asking for a break, and now he's wanting to dive in more, you know, and it's cool to see the kids choose their progression, right? And we can sell it all tomorrow. We could go ride trails and not do any of this racing. It's fine. But it's cool to see him have fun and make the choices and progress in his own world, let alone what we tell them.
Yeah, and it keeps them coming back. I'm happy if I know every week, when are we going to ride? Am I racing this weekend?
Yeah.
You know, and that is exciting to see because there's some of these kids that, you know, we got to race this weekend. Yeah, I don't want to see that. If we ever get to that point, we're not racing. You know, we put the brakes on. But to finish out our motos, we ran all the laps in third place in the PEEWEE, the 4 to 6, and gets cross-rutted 2 turns to go and puts it on the ground. So we finished a 4.8 for a 6 overall, and I was still proud. It sucked. We were all bummed out about it, but just because he's riding the best race he's ever rode.
Welcome to the PEEWEE
Exactly. And my mindset kind of kicked in. Like I would have been livid, but he come off,
Can
smiles.
we go get ice cream?
Yeah, no, he come off all smiles, and he said, "When can I race my KTM?" And I'm like, "Yes,"
It's still a win,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, he's happy to be out there. To him, it's not even racing, but he gets a trophy regardless, and that's all. That's what makes him.
And
smile.
man, like throughout the whole night, Saturday night, there was so many good races. The P-Dub race, the bigger P-Dub class.
There was a lot of battles this weekend.
The Letourneau went down, let Bilberry get a win on a moto. Letourneau still got the overall. Like they were battling all over the place. It was really cool. Corey Keelan's boy Rowdy was in the mix. That kid's been super progressing.
That's a name. The Keelan name is still at Dade City.
Yep.
Son.
Good Lord, man.
And there's another new one. Kyle just had a little boy about a year and change ago. Yeah. So there's going to be another one running
That's where we got our mini from.
So I grew up racing Kyle Keelan.
Yeah. My cousin used to race back in the day, so I used to go. I'm the guy that didn't race, but I slept at the gate at Gatorback to go watch the Sunday afternoon motos.
Yep.
And when my nephew raced, my cousin raced, I would go up and watch, and I'd go to Dade City on Saturday night and just watch motos. And I was the fan. I was just the fan. So I've seen the Hampshires. Marissa Hampshire was really good.
Yeah. I grew up riding at her place with her.
Yeah, like she was really good. And then occasionally Dad would ride, and I took class from Picone.
Yep.
And he hit me with 450 Roos one day, and I literally had like marks, and my wife was like, "You're just here for class. Why are you getting hurt?" And I'm like, that dude was mean going around the corner. And
the worst thing that ever happened to me as a kid was when paintball guns started coming around.
Yeah.
Kenny Yoho bought paintball guns to shoot us all at a 3-day camp.
Oh,
nice.
You didn't screw up too many corners in a row.
Nope.
But I grew up that track. It's just amazing to me that track, the legacy of that track. It doesn't matter if your kid ever becomes anything or not. The legacy of what has been created at that track and still continues to be happening.
It blows me away, and like so many people, like Randy has his own reputation, right?
Good or bad
that stuff.
Yeah.
I've always sworn it's ran great, man. Like I like the no pit riding rules and that type of stuff because it keeps it a safe racetrack. That's the reason that place has survived so long.
And the concessions taste good too.
Yeah, Mama's cooking's always on point.
Yes, it is.
She made some homemade spaghetti this week. It was whoo. But like Randy's always run just a top-notch facility. Always taking care of the kids. That place wouldn't run without Miss Teresa. She, I hadn't been at the racetrack in 17 years, and walked up and she's like, "Oh my God, how are you?" And like put somebody else in charge and like stepped off to the side to talk to me, and never misses a beat, knows every kid's name, every detail. That place would not run the way it is without Miss Teresa.
So I'm so old. I remember, how you guys exit the track now.
Yeah.
I remember that when that was the start line.
Yep.
I mean that's and then all of a sudden it was gone.
Grandma Keelan used to run the gate, right? And I got to see her like 2 rounds ago, right? She came out to watch Rowdy ride. It's like, man, it's crazy how much heritage there is there.
Yeah. And look at some of the riders that have came out of that track. It's just,
dude,
there's so much history.
And like I was so blessed at the time that I grew up. I grew up in Hudson, Florida, not too far from the Hampshire's place. We were really lucky at that time in frame. We had like 4 full-groom private tracks within dirt bike riding distance, and then there was 3 more that were like over a couple of roads, but like we could ride our dirt bikes to them. So every day we all went to somewhere else. I went to high school with different levels of riders, but like 10 motocrossers all within like 2 or 3 years of one another.
Yeah.
So there was a ton of riders. Tyson Hatzel's from the Hampshire family. I grew up riding a lot with him. You know, there's just so much heritage around that area, and that was really cool. And then all the Florida tracks, and like, I mean, look at how many of the top pros all live here, right? There's a reason, right? This place grooms good people.
It's the heart of motocross, period.
So I got you brought up a good point, Kevin. I have a question for both of you. My daughter, I tried like crazy to get her involved in racing because we like racing cars, motorcycles, the whole thing, and she fell in love with horses, and that's been my life for the past 11 years or so.
It's a lot of mine.
Yeah. So the question I have for both of you is, you're talking about the history of, and those are good memories for you of this sport. For you, it was about the racing. How do you keep that in check, but also pass it on and not expect it from your own kids?
It's super hard.
Yeah, I agree.
And I have a list of things. Rob Serace gave me a list of things that I read before I get out of the truck. And we as dads want it way more than that child does, right? And you have to keep that in perspective. We're here to have fun. We're here to race, and that's part of it. But you have to back it down a little bit and see what your kid wants. Something that I do a little bit different than some dads, me and Rob were talking about that this weekend, is on the way home from the track, I cherish the first 30 minutes when we leave. That is my time, right? Because I get to hear what he truly thinks, right? And I listen to him first. I don't talk about how he rode. I ask him how he rode. He progressed. What did he see that he didn't do well, right? And trying to back that down and not push too much of me into him, because I want it way more than he does, and that isn't fair, right? He could want something totally different, but if you don't listen to it, it's really hard. And then you hear what they want to work on or what they think they need to work on, and then you can manipulate that, if you take it as that, and turn it into something positive, right? And then it came from them. They're way more likely to accomplish those goals if they choose to do it themselves rather than what you want them to do.
If they're setting their own goals, it's a totally different mindset.
It's so easy.
All right, so Derek, Kevin gave us his perspective. What's it from your life? Like, you've got 3 boys, and you've got one that's, boy, that smile. And I always joke about him. I'm like, dude, the kid, you can tell he's got the smile.
Yeah, he does,
and it's there. But he's got one that, I'll ride. I don't really care. You've got one that's not ready yet, and then you've got this one that's in it. How do you keep, because you know what you did and where you thought you were going and what happened, how do you keep that perspective in for you?
For me, it's really hard, because our oldest was in it. So, he was the one that wanted to ride, and our one that's racing now that is pretty much bred a racer, I believe.
Head over heels.
We never thought that he would even ride. He had no interest in it at all. He didn't want to watch it on TV. He didn't want to play with dirt bikes. Nothing. So, for me, I think with the oldest, I may have pushed it too hard at the beginning. And maybe that's why he doesn't want to ride. I don't know. But I doubt it. There was a time that I thought that maybe that's what it was, but I'm getting to the point that it's just not his thing, and that's fine. And I've come to the realization that it's what they want, it's not what we want. And if he doesn't want to ride, and so this weekend our oldest looked at the e-bikes, and he watched them ride for a while, and he's like, that's what I want to do. Like, well then, so I actually just talked to a guy today that might buy our whole race package, the 50s, and I'm like, well, we'll buy an e-bike if it's not what you want, and it's not what you want, and Bowen's going to have an e-bike. So
there you go.
I'm looking at it at a different perspective at this point.
My youngest son doesn't want to ride dirt bikes, right? And he actually helps me a lot. My son Camden, he's definitely unique. He's a fun spirit is how I'd phrase Camden, but he puts me in a perspective where like it keeps me from over pushing, right?
Yeah.
Because I can see that it's just not his thing at the moment, and it might be one day, it might not, and that's okay.
Well, you look at Malcolm and James. Malcolm did his own thing.
Malcolm never wanted.
No.
Look at Tomac and his brother. That's a big perspective. That's
there.
A good one. So, Tomac is a full blown you know, race, business, you know, it doesn't matter. And then his brother's in the Air Force.
Yeah.
You know, he's a pilot. And that's one of the biggest comparisons that I can think of. And our oldest is extremely into racing. You know, he sits down with a pen and paper and writes down all their numbers, all their names during a Supercross race, and he's in it in a different perspective.
It's just different.
That's
right?
fine.
And every
yeah.
kid's gonna pick their path.
Yeah. So he might be in our shoes right here at some point in life that maybe he just wants to be a commentator for the races. Maybe he wants to be in the management part of it. And, you know, he can't ride it, but he can talk about it.
I loved mechanicking, you know, for people
Yeah.
and doing that side of stuff, and that was a lot of fun.
But how do you share that? So, like, I come from the world of tennis.
Yep.
And you did not want to be a tennis parent. It's kind of like being a soccer mom. You didn't want to be that because
My mom was a tennis player.
I was so thankful that my daughter went into something. She did gymnastics at a high level, and she got into horses. And her level of expertise is far beyond anything that I know, which was awesome because all I could do was be dad and discipline as a daughter-dad relationship attitude. I didn't know if she was on the right diagonal. I still don't know if she's on the right diagonal. I do understand lead changes and all the stuff that I've learned it. You are in this sport where you see other parents. You're judged by how you react with your kid. You are as well.
Correct.
But you also look at other parents. How do you guide that positively? Because you don't want a kid to hate it.
I think it's really cool because a lot of us all help each other, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're not just alone.
Yeah.
And, like, you kind of find your clique. Like, we're really lucky. We train at Ranch 54 a bunch. And, you know, we're around like-minded parents, you know, that are all looking to progress and all seeing things in our kids that sometimes we may not see or we see and we can't get it through. It's a balancing act, right? And you just got to figure your way through. And your path may be different than their path.
Yeah.
And we're the same way. We're trying, right now, we're in that stage where our kids are making friends. They've made friends with Declan. They made friends with Raina. And we've found, we strive to look for the people that are like-minded like us, because there's a few parents there that are pushing their kids so hard that I have listened to the kids and say, I don't want to ride, you know, at that track, and they say, get your ass on that bike.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be that. I don't ever want to be that.
I'm big about surrounding my kid with good kids, right? And that's how you're successful. It's just raising good humans, man.
It's just like the business
It's
world.
simple. Yeah. And you find your people and you kind of stick with it and you help everybody that you can, do what you can.
How do you? I'll ask this, and I a lot of times I know the answer to these because I came from that
great.
world. But how do you make sure it's their dream and not yours?
Talking.
It's that conversation on the way home from riding.
Yeah, it's,
you know,
it's the communication.
But you have to ask and truly have an open line of communication. And I think that's where sometimes parents get lost, right? And
You got to push a little bit, though, right? I mean, you got to push a little bit.
I would be lying if I didn't say that I didn't push my boy.
Yeah,
you
so
know, and at times push too much.
Yeah, and I'll be the first one to say I'll sit on the line, and you know they're lined up at the gate, and that's when we have our talk. You know, it might be pushy on the line, but it works. So if you're not pushing it all day long to the point that they don't want to do it, you know, save it for when they're in that mentality. When they're not racing, they're being kids. They're playing in the sand pit at Dade City. They're not thinking about racing
with the kid in their class.
Yeah.
If you ask my boy what fun is, winning is fun.
Yeah.
Right? When you ask how you did and you say, oh, we got third. If I ask you how you did and you got first, you're like, dude, we won.
Yeah.
You know, and you're excited to talk about that.
Yeah.
Chip Ganassi also says winning is fun, too.
Yeah.
He's pretty good at his job.
It's the spotlight, but like I said, when they're off the bike, they're being kids. You know, they don't have the mentality that we have, where we're working on the bikes or working on somebody else's bike the whole time they're off the bike. But you know, they're acting like kids. So that's how I've been trying to. If I want to push anything, I push it on the line, because that's when they're ready to ride. You know, they're thinking about riding at that point, and everything you say is sinking in then. Because if you're trying to push it when they're trying to be a kid, then you're pushing them the pushing that you're doing is pushing them away.
And sometimes, like, this is the hard part about being a moto parent is certain kids, you can take the Cicerettis, for example, right? Ryan doesn't need the push. Alex does,
Correct.
right? And their parents know that that kid needs to be pushed and be told that he needs to go.
And for you that don't know, like they're two different riders, and the one is just
They're brothers. And they're both phenomenal riders.
Yeah.
Have so much talent, but they're totally different on how they need to be handled, right?
Yep.
One doesn't need to be yelled at. One may need it every now and again.
One can
right?
figure it all out, you know.
And it doesn't make one way right or wrong. It's just what works for that child, right? And Alex, their dad, has done a phenomenal job. They are working so hard. I really think they're going to come home with some titles from Loretta's this year.
Yeah.
Really looking forward to them. Ryan's faced some adversity here lately. He got hurt a little bit, but they've been putting in the work, you know, and just little minor scuffs. But I really think that Ryan boy's got some really big potential, you know, for the long term.
I'm gonna finish with this question for my interview part because I love this aspect of it. I come from the coaching world, so
Yep.
like I love delving into stuff. 4 years from now, 5 years from now, both kids, 6 years from now, they're going into teenage years. You're in it, and they look at you and say, "Hey, I'd like to go play soccer."
So I'm going to start on this. we had this conversation, Kevin and I. Whether they want this or not, they're going to have their opportunity. So they want it right now. I'm going to give him every chance he's got to.
We've
be on
already done
TV.
this,
Yeah.
right? My boy raced BMX from 2.5 till 5.5, right? We were all in, right? And then he said, "Dad, I don't want to do this anymore." Okay, what do you want to do? We went and played baseball at the beginning of last year, right? Picked up the dirt bike a little bit here and there, but we were in baseball mode. And then started moto, and then he made the choice. Do you want to go back and play baseball this season? Or do you want to just focus on moto? I want to focus on moto, right? It's pretty easy as long as you listen, but you have to listen.
Yeah. Don't push what they
As
don't want.
parents, you can shut them down from talking as well.
Because there's a sunk cost. You get deep into this, there's a sunk cost that you ain't getting back.
No, but from my aspect, and we've talked before, where
Money well spent.
I could have been there, and because of not having what my kids have, I didn't get there. So
Same.
let's facing that adversity and you know, in my young life, that I will give them that opportunity no matter what. If he says next year I want to play baseball, you know, I don't want to race anymore.
Well,
We spent that money, and we have pictures. We have
memories.
You know, yeah, all of it. It's the family time alone. Just the moto family, the camping out there every weekend. Our kids remember that,
And you now have a bigger family because that's what they all turn out to
Yeah.
be. We
Yeah.
spend that much time with one another that they become family.
I'll text him about random stuff. You know, Danny called me today about some random stuff. It's just
Same.
I've only known these guys a couple months, but it doesn't matter.
All the way from motocross stuff to business stuff to, you know, emotional stuff, right? Like, you become like family.
Is this the common answer? Is this the answer we all hope for? Is this
Correct.
the common answer, or is this the
I want to say
uncommon answer?
I want to say no.
Yeah,
It's not.
I don't know how much it's common because I truly feel like I coach differently than some of the parents. Whether that's right, wrong, or indifferent, you talk about the Keelons, right? There is a reason that family has that legacy.
Yeah.
They're stern in their beliefs and they're a racing family and they're successful at it because of what they do, right? And that's something to key in on, right? And like when those guys talk about that stuff, I pay attention, you know, and there's so much little tiny bits of knowledge. Chris Hancock that owns Ranch 54, you know, his Dalton Myers was the fastest kid I've ever seen on a Cobra, ever, period. Like, he was just unbelievably talented, and Chris got him there, and he knows things that he can unlock in kids. That's the reason why they've got 2 kids racing and riding, and they've got another little one going to come up, and they're all super successful super early on. Why is that? It's keys to this and unlocking those things. Something that I do different. We went and ran a bunch of FTR hair scrambles this year. Why? Because I think you learn things in the woods that you won't learn on the motocross track necessarily.
Yeah, ask Derek how those hair scrambles go.
Did all right.
You know, he might like the woods racing better than moto, and it's not up to me to decide. It's up for him to decide. But if I make all the choices for him, he never got a choice, right? So that's a little bit of a different perspective than a lot of moto parents. Because most moto parents, once you're in, and it's because of the money investment, right? You can't go into this sport with nothing, right? Like you'll never make it, unfortunately.
It's a very intensive.
It's very similar to horseback riding there. Yeah. It's the only sport that compares to horseback riding, in my opinion, because the investment. You know, in horses you need 10 acres, a truck, and a trailer. In moto you need a fleet of motorcycles and a RV and a ton of race gas, you know, and tires. Well, it's really interesting.
Before we finish, thank you for joining us.
Absolutely, it was
we'd love to have you back.
Yeah, man, anytime.
We'd love to do a remote sometime, somewhere. We can do it. Sit down and talk about while kids are riding. Give us a little background on your business, because we do. That's one of our things, is we like to support the businesses. So, tell us about yourself.
It's a little unique business. I'm a 3rd generation farrier. My dad, Kenny Mead, is from Hudson and still is a farrier today. He's still working full time. I'm really blessed that I went to every continuing education clinic my dad ever went to as a child. And I was the weirdo kid that didn't just run off and play. I listened at a lot of them. And my dad has done a lot of high-end veterinary work in a number of different vet hospitals. And I got to see a lot of that. So it allowed me to progress as I started doing this as an adult for a living a lot faster than the average person. But yeah, it's a little, you could call it niche business, but there's a lot of us. The horse industry in Florida is booming. This is like almost the horse capital of the world. You know, I mostly do hunter jumpers and dressage, like sport horses. But you know, there's always the occasional trail ride horse or whatever filled in. But I'm kind of a performance-based horse.
You do like the gel pads and everything, and
and most of
hot shoeing. Yeah,
all hot shoeing. Forge. You know, I'm standing in front of a 2,500 degree forge every day, banging on metal.
For those who don't know, they literally turn on a fire, and like you see the old blacksmiths, that's what Kevin's doing.
Yeah,
for his job.
And where I try to be, I don't know necessarily different, but I try to use ground force reaction stuff in my business a lot, and all of that comes through the talent and skill in forging metal. I can put small bends or adjustments in the shoes. If you bend a branch an eighth of an inch different or widen it, it can completely change how a horse moves in a straight line. So I'm searching for that little extra 10% that allows my clients to take their horses and perform to their highest level possible. It's super fun. It's super challenging every day. It's you know, it's something that you're always looking for what you can do better. And we do every horse every 5 weeks, so you get another chance at it 5 weeks from now, right? But your environment changed, and the weather changed, and what they're doing with the horse changed, so it's constantly searching for that 10%. You know, working on super high-end horses, you know, worth more than our houses. You know, and trying.
How do you like wearing chaps every day?
At least I wear pants under mine. but I do make my living bent over.
Yeah, fair enough.
It's a hard job, but I always say it's hard, honest work, right? There's, you know, it's just work, you know, and as a motocross racer, I'm not opposed to work, right? I just put my head down and go to work every day. Really fortunate that gets to provide a living for my family. It's been really challenging to manage my time off to be able to get my son on the bike. That's probably my hardest battle in life, is just trying to balance making enough money, making sure all my clients are taken care of, putting food on the table, but then trying to find and manage how much do I work to be able to take him to the track and getting him on the bike. And we all know that you're only successful if you can get the kid on the bike consistently, and that's a balance, right? And like, you know, he's only 7, but we've had those talks of like, look, buddy, there's certain things that we can and we can't do, and we just have to pick and choose what works best at the right time. And just like I have trust in him, he has trust in me, and working at trying to make the best decisions for him, and he trusts us to make some of those for him. You know, and sometimes we won't get to go to that race, and sometimes we will, and that's part of I think the moto aspect that most moto kids get, you know, and it's valuable.
Since you deal with a lot of the hunter jumpers in the dressage world, do you see a lot of correlation between the two sports, between the horse hunter jumper world and the motocross world, that they're very similar?
Very similar. I'm also a skydiver, right? And it's funny because the indoor skydiving places that they have now, they teach people how to fly vertically. So like sitting up, like you would sit in a chair, and it's exactly like riding a horse in the saddle. So they all now use that tidbit to coach their students.
So let's see. You shoe horses for a living.
Yeah.
You're on a dirt bike and you skydive. Do you play piano or guitar or anything? Anything not life threatening?
I was a competitive shooter. I shot 3-gun competitively. It was like top 50 in the nation.
Okay, so I'm just trying to find out, like, you know, like, hey, I'd like to sit down and have a nice Chardonnay or something. No, we're talking like you're straight PBR and it's on.
Yeah. If I didn't have kids, you wouldn't think I ever went home.
No, that's awesome. But I wanna thank you for joining us, and
thank you for having
I know Derek wanted to have you on because you have the PEEWEE lifestyle and the fact that there was a correlation between the horse life, which
for sure
we have a barn, and my daughter's been in this for she's so talented. She does the 3-day eventing, but
which I do a little bit of.
But she also can ride all disciplines, coach all disciplines.
You have to in order to be a good event rider.
And it's just her thing. It's as you guys talked about your kid, and we had to go the opposite direction of, hey, let's take some time off. We had to pull away versus pushing. There was no pushing. We own a barn. So we would be at the barn at 10:30 at night. We had lights in our arena, and it was like, can we please go home?
I've shot horses at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just part of it.
Yeah. So
you know, you got to get it done. There's very few sports in the world that teach kids good work ethic. Motocross and horses are 2 of those, but horses more so than moto, because it's 2 hours of work for 30 minutes of fun every time they get on the horse. And I tell parents, you know, a lot of parents get to that kind of 15, 16-year-old range, teenager, you know, doing teenager things, right? And they're tired of spending all the money, right? And I tell them, I'm like, just weather the storm, because this is what's going to teach your kid to be productive in life. And it's the same thing in moto, you know, and they may not be working on certain things specifically, but like my dad made me rebuild all our top ends and do all that stuff and do air filters and all of that. Like, it's the same thing, it's just different, right? And showing your kid, I think that's where I like the single athlete sports better, is because it teaches do those things.
Yeah.
And really shows you a different aspect than the team sport and somebody else picking up your shortcomings, right? You're held accountable.
Well, we appreciate you making the drive. Derek, you and I guess we're going to try to get the wives in next week.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes.
We'll see how it goes. We got one round left.
We should have had your wife on.
Of Supercross.
That'd have been fun.
And I'm looking for the excitement. What are we looking for next week?
I really don't know. I mean, we've kind of hit the excitement of the season, and I think at this point, honestly, we're just going to start gearing towards what we intended on gearing towards the entire time. You know, I think we're briefly going to hit the race, but our aspect, our goal for this is just amateurs, and nobody gives these kids recognition. And
yeah, I mean, there's so much that happened at Dade City that we could have talked about tonight. Like,
and it was so actually a very exciting weekend. There was a lot of good racing. There was a lot of accidents. There was a lot that nobody sheds a light on. So, you know, what's their life like after they wreck like that?
Little Easton Latino right beside us took one of the gnarliest hits I've seen in a long time. He was flying through the air like a rag doll on a start. Yeah. You know, and sucked it up and got it done in his next race, right? Yeah. And pushing through that adversity. Jake Smith was on fire last night. Yeah. That kid was looking awesome. Jay-Z Ray put in some good motos. You know, there's so many good rides that, you know, could really focus and talk a lot.
And nobody ever talks about that stuff. All we hear about is the pros, and you know, we focus on the pros to get our, I guess, to build our clientele, if you want to say, but to prove that we can do this. But our focus is the amateurs. And
I mean, you had Florida Motocross Series at Okeechobee last week. Yeah. I-4's kicking off. You know, there's so much that we could talk about on the amateur
and
side.
We're actually getting intertwined with a lot of that now. We have a guest coming up here soon, and you'll know about it when it comes. But we're getting more involved in the amateur stuff at this point, and I think this is really going to be a nice platform for the kids that don't get, you know, the recognition that they need, and to show like you or like me, you too, that what goes into this sport. You know, we race for a few hours, but there's a whole lot of work that happens behind the scenes to make this happen. So it's going to be fun. Next week we'll get the wives on and see their perspective of being moto mom, moto wife.
Yeah.
And they're invaluable.
Well, I'm going to tell you,
I would be lost
for
without
me.
mine.
My moto wife is my manager, my coach, my nutritionist. Now, I don't have a moto mom because my moto mom is actually a horse mom. And that was, you know, when they were going to nationals, and it's crazy in the horse world, he'll tell you, there's more women that drive trailers. My daughter at 16 could back a gooseneck trailer better than most men. Yep. So these women, moto moms, horse moms, I will put them up against any moto moms or whatever.
Dude, I would be lost without mine.
They go through it. Like, without mine, we load the toy hauler up once we finally get it back. But when we do, you know, she's got the meals ready for the weekend. You know, that thing's packed, ready to go. I do a lot of packing of it, you know, our stuff, but
it'll actually be perfect. It'll be Mother's Day Sunday. It'll be a great time to do that. We'll celebrate the Supercross champions. My wife kicking my butt in fantasy again. My wife was like,
you better pick RJ this weekend.
My wife was
almost calling it out. He's gonna win it.
Yeah.
She almost got a national number last year.
I had one the year before.
Oh man, she'll be not happy about that. She's not close this year, but she's still beating me.
I missed a couple because moto dad life, you know, and I just.
It's hard.
It's so hard,
especially to juggle some virtual reality. And
it's so much fun though playing it.
Oh man,
it's so much fun.
It's totally changed how I watch Supercross and motocross.
Yeah. I bounce stuff like I'll tell Derek, like, yeah man, I picked this guy. He was a negative. He was an 8. And he's like 8. I'm like, all I had to do was finish 17th, and I'm golden. Like,
I mean, same with this.
Do you play in the Idiots League?
We were gonna play this year, but it's hard because both of us want to play, so we have to double pay for everything.
Yeah. It's the bet. I look at it as it's $100. It's 20 rounds. You're talking $5 a round.
Yeah.
You know, to add a little spice in it. And
you spend more dumb money on other stuff.
Yeah, I burn $100 on stupider stuff.
I watch people will do that in the lottery line every.
Exactly.
Good
Yeah.
Lord.
And
How do they do that? I don't have an extra dollar to give.
No, it's ridiculous. Yeah. Occasionally we'll buy like a $20 ticket or something just because. But then you're like, why did I?
I was late in here today because the 3 people in front of me, one lady, what
17,
what-
32,
no, no.
52,
What numbers?
16.
What number? We're on number 3 on this one. Oh no, I went at 3. Okay, I'm like, dude, it's all chance. Like, just
It's
pick a car.
randomness.
Like, it's just randomness.
It's
but
ridiculous.
but on the side note, thank you very much.
Can I thank a few sponsors?
Please,
Yeah,
please.
all right.
Do whatever you gotta do.
I've been fortunate enough to have a handful of people step up on board to help Declan this year. Big one is Ranch 54 for allowing us to ride out there. Chris, I can't thank them enough. Ryan Sipes has been coaching Declan on Wednesdays a bit and really helping us there.
Is that also number 2?
Yeah. Well, no, that's
No.
his brother.
Oh, that's his brother.
Justin,
That's his brother.
Justin
Oh.
Sipes is Poosa.
Ryan.
Ryan,
Oh,
the
yeah,
rider.
Okay, yeah. The general.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Which is awesome.
Tell him we'd love to have him on.
Yeah, we'll do. But Skydive City, the drop zone that I jump at in Zephyr Hills, came on board and helped me out. Mosley Heating and Air, a big Tampa Bay heating and air company, came on board. And then Pure Polymer Solutions, they do like lake treatment to like get rid of cloudy and murky water and that type of stuff. Ed's brand goggles. I know I'm forgetting a few, but Southern Savage Photography, shooting out at Dade City. Yeah, we couldn't do it without them. It's really helped us a lot.
Perfect. That's what we want. We want people to come on and promote themselves. We have 2 sponsors. We have Michelle and Trey Real Estate, and we have DBS Fabrication.
We now got JQX helping us out here with our signage and stuff. So give them
So
a big shout out.
It's the only way it worked. It really.
Well, we enjoy
is
it, and
the
we're
truth.
looking forward to the next few months. And once I get my schedule acclimated, I'm going to be the dude in the little hatchback car coming out and writing reports, and that way I have stuff to talk about and relying on other people and maybe jumping on board, having people jump on board and telling us updates. Like my nephew told me, hey, these guys are racing off road. There's guys that will cover Hunter Hart. He's like, I'll cover your IXC series or something for you, and so we can start just covering the stuff that the normal people are doing and giving credit.
Yeah, it's awesome, to give back. There's what's his name that sponsors a bunch of the kids at Dade City.
He owns Stingray Chevrolet.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I'm terrible at names. I don't do
so
names.
am I. I feel like it's Ray, but it's not.
I know what you're talking about. Yes.
I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but yeah, he pretty much funds their entire season. Quite 6, 10 of them, I think, or something.
And rode 4 races this weekend. That's 8
Yeah.
motos. He's like 60 years old.
Yeah.
Wow.
He is one of the toughest dudes I've ever met.
And he's having a blast.
And gives back into the sport, and truly making it to where kids can ride. I'm sorry, I can't remember your name off the top of my head.
It's all right. We'll stay Stingray Chevrolet. There's
Yeah.
2. There's
Yeah.
one in Tampa. There's one in Bartow.
It's just awesome that he's giving back into something that meant so much to
Yeah.
him. And helping people out. That's what makes this world turn, and it's the only way that you can accomplish it. It's such a hard sport to be able to afford every little nook and cranny piece.
It's hard.
That it takes a village to make this work. And
You can't do it without.
For those that are local, we just had round 7. When is round 8?
2 weeks.
yep.
We got Mother's Day weekend off, so I think we're gonna
it's the
take a
20th.
camping trip, and then just us as a family, and then dig back into it.
Okay,
It's
so
the 20th.
The 20th, 21st.
It's the 20th.
Okay. So if
And-
you're not doing anything, go to Dade City on May 20th.
Yeah.
Watch PEEWEEs. They got pro class. They got old men class. One of my buddies races the 35 no jump class, and on the 21st I'll be doing an enduro in the middle of the woods, and there's no point in come watching that. But I'll talk about that on the 22nd.
And the 22nd, we have a special guest on.
Yeah.
So, and look for our sign at Dade City if you want to come. Stop in, have a chat. I'll be happy to talk
Same.
with anybody.
Same at our
And
pit.
And if we get enough interest, I will come to a race and we'll do a remote broadcast.
You should anyway.
We,
Well,
That-
don't you have to have permission for that?
Not there with that part. They're kind of lenient.
We're not monetizing it.
We can work on that.
Okay.
We'll figure it out.
Shouldn't be that hard.
Hey,
But-
I'm willing to go.
Yeah.
I'm willing to go.
We'd love to interview some of these kids. And
Yeah.
I really think that would go a long way, you know, and I think something that Dade City incorporated in is the podium interviews and that type of stuff.
Yeah.
And that's just helping make kids more well-rounded human beings.
And I kind of want to be. Speaking of the Dade City podium interviews, I'd like to sit down after the podium, you know, like a little press, with us sitting there and interview some of these kids.
It's hard because like it has to be like the right kid to where they know how to talk,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
A little bit of prep.
Yep.
But these kids will feed you all kinds of info, you know, and they all have their own thoughts outside
Yeah.
of what we think.
No, I just want to ask them what their favorite topping on a cheeseburger is. I
Yeah.
mean, really, that's
Yeah.
the most important thing.
A couple little 30-second talk, you know,
Yeah.
that adds up when you talk to 15 kids, and
Yep.
they're going to remember every little bit of that.
Yep.
But that's what we're wanting to do. I
Yeah.
want to
No,
cover the off-road world. I want to
it's-
cover the amateur stuff.
It's why I wanted to come over, you know. I love the amateur side of racing, you know, and the pros are fun, but everybody talks about that.
Yeah.
And
Amateur's
it's-
where it all begins.
And there's so much effort put out on the local racing level.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, it's a blast. I mean, my wife and I, we woke up 2 weeks ago at 4:30 in the morning, so I could go race a hare scramble that I'm not even racing the series, but I just wanted to go race.
I don't know how I managed this, but me and my boy are riding all weekend. We're riding the next 3 days, and then we're
Yeah.
riding all weekend over Mother's Day.
Yeah.
Ooh.
It's hard.
That's how much my wife supports this.
Hey, that's
She's taking the little guy to a show, and then we're gonna go ride all day.
sweet. Well, guys, it's 2 hours and 22 minutes. I'm going to
Yeah.
break off some of these. We're going to keep everything solid, but I'm going to break off a couple of segments of what we talked about, the amateur stuff. We talked about your business
Yep.
and those relations, but it was a great show. Break it into segments. Don't watch the whole thing at one time. It's like watching the Pulp MX show. We're not 5 hours in, but it's amazing how quickly it can get into that depth.
Yeah, we're glad you guys stuck around for the whole thing.
At some
If you-
point, you're just gonna split it into 2 separate versions.
Yeah, but right now it's
Yeah.
gaining traction and getting everybody out there. You know.
Thank you for having me on, guys. It was fun.
Thank you
It
for
was a
joining us.
blast.
I appreciate it. All right, for Derek Schaefer with DBS Fabrication, I'm Trey Heath with Michelle and Trey Real Estate. This is the Beyond the Curve podcast. We want to thank Kevin for joining us tonight. Kevin Mead, if you need some horses shod, give Kevin a call. And we want to thank you for joining us. Round 16 in the books. Round 17, all of the coronations of the champions next weekend. Bye-bye.
See you later.
See ya.
All right, Fuzzy.